It is Thursday, the 30th of October, 2025, and I just realized like I haven't been showing my face, my video since I got back um, super early in the morning. Yet again, I've been up for a few hours, and I've shared a lot of current events on my social media platforms like my Instagram, but not so much on my videos just because it's been so negative, and I was gone for almost 3 weeks. An incredible travel experience and went to Spain. Again, I've been there before, saw different things this time. Italy, France, Montenegro, Greece. It was incredible seeing the ancient ruins, different museums, different cathedrals that you can have access to. Saw so many different things that reconfirm or reinforce these theories that I have about this cosmos, and all very incredible pieces of art. Like it was just, I went to the Vatican. I would have loved to have gone to the library or seen the like the archives or the underground tunneling system where they have a lot of different artifacts and books. And anyway, Sistine Chapel was there for hours, the Colosseum, etc., etc. And anyway, and so I've been on this trend of sharing more like esoteric stuff, I guess, this week. But I digress. Here's some current events before I get into Rosicrucianism, because it's, in this video I haven't seen before. It also talks about the Vatican. But anyway, before I get into that, Mario for the North, he shares a lot of good information. And so here's just a couple.
This. Mark Carney just posted this, and he said to build Canada strong, we have to protect and empower each other. Budget 2025 will ensure organizations, spelt with an S, not with a Z, that address gender-based violence, protect 2S LGBTQI plus communities, and empower women in leadership roles have the funding they need to continue their vital work. For starters, to protect Canadians, we need stronger laws. And we don't need to give funding to any organization. In fact, we give enough funding with our tax dollars to you. And you've done absolutely nothing to protect us. In fact, you took the summer off. We have an
Yeah.
overinflated budget.
He was the financial advisor since 2020. He was the Bank of Canada. He did a shit job. Same thing with in the UK, shit job that even the Prime Minister admitted it, and people voted him in. So this is our own damn fault. Like, ugh, anyways, but also state-funded media, printing of the money that Chrystia Freeland was doing, and again, she has a relationship with Mark Carney that transcends politics, right? So where even her son, um, Mark Carney, is his godfather. So um, yeah, the connections run deep, and they've destroyed the Canadian economy. They've destroyed the housing market, so many different things, and the amount of immigrants that have come in the past few years. And again, I'm not racist, and I do believe that immigration actually can work and does work. But how it has been handled in the last few years, there has been an influx, and it's not helping anyone. People coming or people here, and more Canadians are leaving. A lot more businesses have left. There's been a new contract awarded to Brookfield, which is now in New York, for $100 billion, and that's just a start. And so I'll just get into my points here too. Doug Ford, like because I hadn't mentioned this before, but that advertisement that he put out there, that was absolutely in poor taste. It was abhorrent. It was embarrassing. It was taken out of context, and just the irony in that when it's America is retaliating against Canada because we've had things like the dairy cartel, et cetera, where we have actually tariffed and imposed tariffs on the U.S. 200, 300, 400, 500% tariffs, and gotten away with it. And so the solution here, which is what people have been saying for literally years, is that we need to have a free trade agreement. Imagine that. People think that we have it, but really only on paper, and even that has not been signed. Like the new USMA, whatever you want to call it, trade agreements, not signed by Canadians. Why? Um, and that took us off the table. And so, and then Trump penalizing us further. And by the way, Ontario people, like as if you're not mad enough at Doug Ford. Like even 3 years ago, I posted a video that I had made with Andrea Sturtis. I was calling out Doug Ford even then. So this is not a new bandwagon that I've jumped on. I've said this for years. Doug Ford is a criminal. He's a liar. He's a moron. He's a cheater. So like I could just go a grifter, and he is not good for Ontario. $75 million for those ads that just further penalized Canada. So well done, morons. And people keep on voting him in as well. Like just had another friggin' by-election, whatever you want to call it, in January or February, whenever it was before the federal elections. And I was saying like I'm not voting for Doug Ford, absolutely not. I'm not voting for the lib person in either. And so it's like just like 2021 all over again was anyway. PPC looking looking better and better, but at the time, obviously. So I voted conservative the last federal election, and I think that Pierre Poilievre, even though there's things about him when what he has said or policies that he's implemented or supported that I don't agree with, like he sometimes finally shifts when there's enough pressure from his constituents. But like even with COVID, like he was fully on board. He wasn't the leader of the opposition at the time, but still, like he was in support of the mandates, the lockdowns, the forced inoculations. They were bragging about having 100% people within cabinet that were inoculated, and again, like a huge bias. And people like myself were emailing them for literally years, giving them the actual medical, scientific, and government data, and they acknowledged receipt. However, they never did anything about it, but they know better. Anyway, Mark Carney, he was at the APEC meetings. Don't know if he still is. Don't care. And he gets called out by Trump to his face, sitting down with other presidents and talking about tariffs and essentially slamming Canada. And Carney again does nothing about it, says nothing. And people are saying yet again this year that there might be an election. So I'm just trying to get everything Canadian news related out of the way so I could get into the more interesting things. Not more important, but more interesting. So, but anyway, yeah. So Mark Carney embarrassed internationally, no deals of subsistence. He's piggybacking off of contracts with that were already put in place prior to him becoming the prime minister. Ugh. And but anyways, he's trying to piggyback on that and say that these are new developments or contracts put in place under him. It's not true. That's a lie. But he lies so much. Oh yeah, election season. Almost every single year for the last 5 years, people have been saying that, oh, there's going to be an election. There's going to be an election around Christmas time. It's always around that time, and so the rumor mill is out again. There were even people that were talking about how they were even already starting to print the election ballots and things like that at one point. I think it was like 2 years ago. No, sorry, this was last year because we wanted there to be a vote of non-confidence for Justin Trudeau in the new year, but he prorogued government to circumvent that and get Mark Carney to be placed as the friggin' Bilderberg rep for Canada, the Bilderberg WEF rep for Canada. Anyway, I don't know if there's going to be an election. They say it every single year. There's MPs on both sides that are saying that there's going to be an election. They're both blaming the other side for wanting an election. The Conservatives are saying that the Liberals think that they're going to get a majority, and the Liberals are saying that the Conservatives think that they're going to win. And so, rinse, repeat, rinse, right, recycle, repeat. Sorry, there's a bug that just dropped on my notes. Election season majority. Oh yeah, and there's going to be a huge budget deficit that's going to be announced when the budget's released. It's going to be, I'm hoping not as disastrous as people are predicting, like over 90 billion. When we already almost doubled the budget deficit last year, and we shouldn't be doing that. And there's supposed to be a cap, a limit. And now that we don't have trade deals in place, and we're getting further punished for the moronic behaviors of Doug Ford and Carney, because they're both responsible for that stupid ad taken out of context. And yeah, they just don't care. Okay, so I'll let him keep on talking, then I'll get into it.
And this to me sounds more like money laundering than actual action. Because if you wanted to take action, you would literally make our laws stronger, tougher, and keep these criminals behind bars. But instead, you vote down the three strikes you're outlaw. You also turn down the conservative motion for jail, not bail, for political purposes. So you can make yourself look good for the problem that your party created. It's ridiculous.
Oh, and they're also talking about tariffs also being responsible for so many jobs in Canada being lost, in like more like blue collar type occupations, careers, and it's the carbon taxes, ladies and gentlemen. And this is getting worse. And the cost of living in Canada is getting worse. And so I went to the grocery store yesterday. I had been gone for a few weeks, and staples that I've gotten for the last couple of years, price increase just in the last 3 weeks. What's happened? Connie's happened. So there was something that was $10 before that, like a couple of years ago, was $8, and then like I think like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, changed to $10 for this certain thing I'm talking about. Yesterday, it's $12, and so that is a significant increase. Despite what people may think, but for a $10 item to now be $12 out of the blue in the last 3 weeks, what's happened? Carney's happened, and it's just it's not a dairy product, it's not a steel product, like any of that stuff. It's anyway, it's chicken. Chicken salad. Okay.
Even after an ad,
Just wait.
the Federal Interim
Listen to
Health
this.
Program is administered by the Federal Immigration Department for individuals not eligible for provincial health insurance.
Not eligible for provincial health insurance because they're not paying into it.
It includes coverage for refugee claimants, even if their claims are later found to be bogus.
Yeah, so there are people coming in claiming refugee status, and this is even on government websites in Canada. If you're part of the LGBTQ plus IA XYZ community, okay, they're saying please come in. You're basically front of the line. So people are lying, coming in from India, saying they're bisexual and that they're going to be oppressed, and they're like fake news. Okay, you're not going to get stoned to death like you would in the Middle East. But anyway, so people are coming here with their families, men with their wives, one of their wives out of their few, like in some cases, and their children, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm bisexual." It's a complete lie. It's a scam, and people are getting away with this. And there are organized groups within Canada that are sending information to people in countries, their friends and their family, and telling them how to also do the same thing. So you're always going to have people that are going to exploit a system when you make it so easy to. And this is Canada, and there's so much about Canada that's being destroyed in the process. And again, I can't even stress enough how this cabinet, these people that have been in for like 10 years, they need to be fired. People keep on electing these people. I just can't even believe it. These are traitors to Canada, the people that are actually electing these people, and the people that are selecting these people to still have these cabinet positions when they have done nothing but hurt Canadians now for literally years. No accountability. They should be in jail, and they're huge grifters, but minimum they should be fired. And that could have happened, but you have these alliances with these other grifters within government that are in part of the NDP and Bloc, that when it matters the most, they vote against Canada. Anyway, I'm going on these tangents. Sorry.
According to the government, the cost of this program was $800 million last year. $800 million. This is up from $66 million in 2017. Do you have any indication why the cost of this program has skyrocketed?
Again, I think that there's probably a multifactorial basis to that. One, there are probably more people entering through these programs. But two, I would also say that physicians, because it is uninsured and there's less accountability, physicians are more aggressive with their billing practices in this, and they charge premiums on these programs and services. So I believe that it is.
This is food that's getting taken away from children, disabled people, veterans, of varying different first responder type communities or services, and they're going towards people who are exploiting us and making it the cost of living much more expensive. And if you look at the rates, even in 2023, 2024, this should be waking people up, right? Like this is replacement migration, and I hope there's a way of actually coming back from this so that we can actually still have Canadian culture, identity. Like we could be literally the best country in the world when it comes to economic resources and abundant, like things that we have in place that we could access. And we just have the biggest morons in the House of Commons. I just can't even believe just how bad it's gotten. It used to be so much better. I used to listen to debates. I've been in Parliament even when I was at RMC to listen to them conversate, and it was never like the level of ignorance. And this is because Justin Trudeau also he hired a DEI cabinet. It was absolutely DEI. He wanted to like fill quotas, and so this had nothing to do with merit. So a lot of the people that we have in right now in cabinet and the House of Commons, these are DEI hires. Like these are not people that are remotely qualified to do the job, and this is so dangerous. and then you have the this banker, Wef Bilderberg banker, that's selecting who has put in place for cabinet, and the governor general just rubber stamps it. No accountability.
It's inefficient. And
this is what they're voting for.
Dr. Haddad, again, are doctors charging higher rates for services charged through the federal interim health program compared to the standard provincial rates charged to Canada patients?
Yes.
There is a massive cost to asylum seekers, even if they are found to be lying about their asylum seeker status. Do you see the problem with this? This is a scam. We are not the world's hospital. We are not here to take in the world's sick and needy. We are not a global charity when we have record food bank use. Canadians can barely afford to eat, and yet we're footing the bill of nearly $1 billion for these asylum seekers' health cares. And I've seen some of these programs, and benefits that they get are greater than the benefits that I get with the insurance that I have to pay extra for. It makes no sense. We need negative immigration. Anyone who shows up to our borders or shows up to our ports or the airports and uses the word asylum seeker needs to be sent back, and they need to go through the Canadian embassy process in their country. We have set the expectation where we will take anyone in, even if it takes years to process their asylum claim. If countries are not at war, we should not be taking them in, period.
Bingo.
Our country's resources are being raided, whether you want to accept it or not. This is a verifiable fact.
Yep.
We have birth tourism. We have scam artists coming in through the LMIA program. We have scammers saying that they're coming here to study, and 50,000 of them don't show up to the first day of school. And they get our health care that we've paid into nearly our whole lives for free, even if they lie. It's unsustainable. It's insane.
It's unsustainable and it's insane. And see, this stuff just ticks me off because I've been saying this for years. People have been saying this for years. And you have people in cabinet and the House of Commons that are so far removed from reality that it's just never going to change. Okay, Toronto Food Bank use, 4.1 million visits. More than half are newcomers to Canada. 1 in 10 people in Toronto visiting food banks. Thank the Liberals. Okay, let's see here. Here we go.
Carney's going to be very happy to read this. Brookfield and Cameco just signed an $80 billion nuclear reactor deal with the U.S. government. The Trump administration, they're arranging the financing. They're going to give them approvals. This deal involves Westinghouse Electric, Cameco, and Brookfield Asset Management. For those who don't know, I found this article from back in November 2023, where Brookfield owns 51% interest in Westinghouse and Cameco owns the remaining 49%. If you guys don't remember, Carney lied to all of us about his support in relocating Brookfield headquarters from Canada into the US. He said that the formal decision was actually made after he cut ties with Brookfield, but the company announcement and the decision was prior to him leaving. He knew about it, he supported it, he approved it as the chair of Brookfield. And if you didn't know, Mark Carney held $6.8 million in Brookfield options before he left to become Prime Minister. If I could make a very conservative estimate, I would guess that since becoming Prime Minister and taking over Trudeau, Mark Carney has made and netted at minimum $6 to $10 million in equities that he owns in the US. I almost forgot the best part.
Hey folks, breaking news. A motion just passed in the House. The CEO of Brookfield Properties and Prime Minister Mark Carney's chief of staff will have to testify in front of the Ethics Committee.
That's right. They're going to have to testify in front of the Ethics Committee with conservatives drilling them with questions. So finally, we're going to start to see and get some answers. Accountability. Carney's going to be very happy to read this. Brookfield.
So many businesses in Canada are fleeing to the U.S. and other countries because to avoid the carbon tax scam and their companies just knowing the writings on the wall, because Carney is a net zero, G-fans, green energy, climate scam artist, grifter. Let's see here. Okay, maybe that's it for Canadian news. Just a friggin' shit show. Anyway, I did a podcast with Pat King. I went to Montreal for it. He has a great studio, and it it took a little while. It took almost a month, but it has aired. So it was on Spotify 2 days ago, I think, and he is on YouTube as well. So I just provided the link to the podcast. It will be airing live on his channel today at noon, and I'm not sharing it yet because I want to give him a chance to. I want to give him a chance. He's like way more popular on social media than I am, but I want to give him a chance for his channel to get the max amount of views as possible. So give it a few days and then I will post it. But if you're interested in looking at it, then it's going to be on his channel at noon today. It was a very interesting podcast. I really enjoyed doing it. It did bring up a lot of repressed trauma, suppressed trauma from the COVID era, and but I'm not going to stop talking about it because people still haven't been held accountable. And I'm talking jail time, fired, sued into bankruptcy, etc. And yeah. So here we go. Yeah, these bills that are coming out as well. Oh my God, what a shit show. Anyway. No, that's not what I want to share. There we go. Okay, so I haven't watched this yet. So this will be a interactive. This is from Robert Edward Grant. This was posted over a year ago. Rosicrucian Mysteries, Sacred Geometry, and Ancient Wisdom. Dr. Robert Gilbert, think tank. It could just be Gilbert. Okay, so rest in peace, Dr. Gilbert. So this was 8 months ago. Anyway.
Dr. Robert Gilbert, what a pleasure to have you on the Think Tank. I'm so excited to finally meet you. I've been watching your stuff. I kind of have a thing for geometry also. So I think we definitely probably resonate on so many levels. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion. But just welcome to my podcast.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, it's great to connect with you. I've definitely met many mutual friends of us both in our various circles, and it is just so good to be on your show and to get to connect with you.
Likewise. So I want to jump right in. I mean, I think you've done such a great job on several podcasts talking about kind of how you got to where you are now, which I think is phenomenal. And I love all the work you're doing. I'm super fascinated by Rosicrucianism. And because a lot of the work that I've been doing is directly related to that and what, the Renaissance period polymaths left behind that was encrypted, and it's all related to Rosicrucianism. So I'm just super fascinated to have this conversation with you. Plus, I just got back from the Vatican, where I was given access to the Vatican Library, and I found Rosicrucianism and Hermetic symbolism throughout the entire Vatican Library, which was kind of a shock for me. So I'm wondering if you can kind of elucidate your perspective and illuminate for our consciousness why this thread, this golden thread of Rosicrucianism seems to be so prominent, particularly through the ages and in particular the Renaissance period.
Yes, absolutely. So when you take a look at external history, talking about the Rosicrucians, they usually start in the early 1600s when particular books became available in the German-speaking world relating to the existence of this mysterious order of the Rosicrucians. And at that time, that got to be, it was part of, I believe, the type of Renaissance impulse of reclaiming the knowledge from the past that we had lost, the knowledge of ancient Egypt, etc. But the Rosicrucians were presented as a group of independent initiates who were connected, but didn't necessarily have any type of external physical structures or hierarchy to work through. It was often referred to as a type of invisible college that existed on a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you then go more deeply into it, you find the Rosicrucians themselves say that they had actually begun their operations as Rosicrucians, not at the time that the books appeared in the early 1600s, but back in the 1400s. Particularly, they give dates like 1459 as the time of the initiation of a mysterious initiate named Christian Rosenkreutz.
Mm-hmm.
And that as you go more deeply into it, it's so deeply connected to the whole Hermetic impulse, the idea of picking up wisdom and knowledge from multiple traditions around the world, that, of course, has a very deep connection to ancient Egypt. And one of the things that I found looking into it more deeply from the Rosicrucians' own sources, which goes again from these early 1600s texts into a variety of other texts at later times, and also the work of Rudolf Steiner, who, in my opinion, was the most advanced Rosicrucian initiate ever to make themselves known to the public.
Interesting.
And that was a huge sacrifice for Rudolf Steiner to do that. Once you become known, then you get all types of attention that makes
I can imagine
a regular life more difficult.
Kind of like you.
Well, I'm an introvert, and becoming a public figure has become a bit of a challenge.
I can imagine.
But to do this work, it's so incredibly rich and vitalizing to be involved in this and helping to educate the public on these things, as I'm sure you've experienced.
I'm an introvert also. I mean, I like to spend most of my time in things like mathematics and geometry. And so being in the public eye, somewhere I've been most of my life, actually, even though it wasn't something I sought out. I used to be in the pharmaceutical industry. And then I went through a spiritual awakening, and now I teach geometry and resonance, and I'm an entrepreneur as well. But it's totally different life for me now, completely different life for me. And I can imagine that it must be very different from your time also, from when you started out early, in the military, and then kind of going throughout your entire career, which is a whole other discussion, I'm sure. But
yes,
what is it, do you think, that these Rosicrucian polymaths, because a lot of them were, and first of all, do you believe that that Rosenkreutz was actually a real person? Because I mean, the name is kind of suspicious, right? It's like Rosenkreutz. I mean, that doesn't seem very realistic, right?
Well, there's no way he was born Christian Rosenkreutz.
No way.
That's a title, really.
Yes.
So
it's like a Shakespeare.
Right.
Something isn't right. The ease of modern digital communication comes with costs. What are these colossal technology companies doing with our words, with our energy, and with our very beings? Can you imagine an event horizon where they use against us what we unknowingly gave? Orion emerges as an end-to-end quantum secure messenger that places the freedom of expression back where it belongs, with the people. More than a platform, it's a movement to reclaim your voice and freedom, a movement of people with profound ideas and a deep desire to help the human race. Let's get back to communicating meaningfully in our lives. It's time to rise above the surveillance, the shadow bans, and the censorship. It's time to free our voices. In a time when free speech and assembly are absolutely necessary, Orion stands tall, ensuring that you can free your voice.
Well, what the Rosicrucians themselves say about it is that in these initiatory processes, this is connected, of course, to number and geometry, which is all through the Rosicrucian work, that it takes a circle of 12 to do the initiatory action that allowed that particular individual, whose name at the time was not Christian Rosenkreutz, to go through an initiation where they attained the level of Christian Rosenkreutz as the leader of this new impulse. Now, one of the background concepts here, really goes back to number one. Let's take a look at the sacred geometry aspect of it, that they really keep emphasizing the 12 around the one. Now, of course, Rosicrucianism is a type of esoteric Christianity. And so it's considered that the figure in the center in original Christianity was, of course, Christ. And then you had the 12 disciples around that being.
Very much like Da Vinci's Last Supper.
Yes, exactly. And so the whole idea there, Steiner talks about the way that to fully understand the reality of any topic, any reality that we're trying to analyze, we have to see it from 12 different perspectives. And according to Steiner, that's like the minimum number of perspectives on anything to really understand all of its different facets. There's at least 12 different key facets for it. And so that's why we have 12 signs of the zodiac around the sun, 12 disciples around Christ, etc. And then we can take this further to what I like to refer to as the thought forms in the mind of God, which is the actual originating point from a higher divine level for all of the number and sacred geometry mysteries that we so delight in exploring. And that is something, brought out so brilliantly by the work of Buckminster Fuller. And in Synergetics, he talks about the way that if you have a central sphere, the sphere being the perfect form because every point on the periphery is equidistant from the center, creating the perfect spherical form. If you see how many spheres you can pack around the central spheres, which he calls close packing of spheres, you get exactly 12 around the one. And so this becomes a type of universal harmonic that then manifests within initiatory groups. Yes, you then have the work with the cuboctahedron and what was brought out with the Victor equilibrium and the work of Buckminster Fuller. But again, this core concept being with the close packing of spheres, you have the 12 around the one that then gets into the cuboctahedron structure when you connect all the center points together. And so that then becomes the originating source for why 12 initiates work to initiate Christian Rosenkreutz and the Rosicrucian story, and why we have the 12 around one with the Christ, etc. So I do believe that this is related to a real process and to the formation of esoteric groups using principles based on numerical harmonics, which then create following the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, is then a mirroring of the higher divine principle, like the 12 around the one with the cuboctahedron, close packing of spheres, and that this became something that was known in ancient times, in ancient Egypt with the Greeks, etc., and then manifested in the actual structure of the initiatory groups. So I do believe Christian Rosenkreutz was a real person. And the other thing that I found, this is my personal opinion, is that the Rosicrucian tradition is not something that just kind of appeared out of nowhere. I believe it to be an evolutionary manifestation, a metamorphosis of what had occurred before in the Egyptian time, and the way that you can see the Egyptian knowledge moving into the Jewish and the Greek Kabbalah, and then moving into the esoteric mysteries of Europe, such as the Holy Grail tradition, and then manifesting as the Rosicrucian tradition as a mirroring of what's often referred to as the evolution of consciousness. That as our consciousness evolves and the form of culture evolves, we have to change the way that the esoteric knowledge is transmitted, and that people go through initiation, which I believe involves the activation of latent circuits in the human mind and body that are related to actual sacred geometry patterns in the subtle body. That was very much, I believe, the perspective of these ancient traditions, to activate these patterns in the subtle body so that the person would become an initiate. And that we have then, as the culture has changed and the state of human consciousness has changed, we get a kind of constant evolutionary upgrading of the teaching and of the initiatory methods to be able to match the consciousness of people as time goes on. Because if you try to initiate a modern Western person today in the old Egyptian method, and you show them things like the baboons of Jehute, the baboons of Thoth, we have no cultural reference for what a baboon does. It's just like, well, what are they worshiping animals? What's going on? But no, it's actually that they could see there are certain types of divine functions that were being performed by all these animals that are shown in the Egyptian pantheon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we could see then functionally that they are like a pure one-sided manifestation of that divine power, that siddha, to be able to take on a particular role. And so for an ancient Egyptian, if they saw baboons serving Thoth, that would make sense to them in a way it makes no sense to us today, because we just don't have the same perceptions. So I do believe that the Rosicrucian tradition is a kind of modern manifestation of the ancient knowledge from Egypt, Greece, the Jewish Kabbalah, etc., into a modern form that has been changed into a format that modern people can understand based on our state of consciousness and on how our culture is structured.
So if we go back to 1451, that was the 1451 actually is a different reference I'm making, but the 1451 reference was the release by the Vatican of thousands of Hermetic texts that then ended up going. It was the year before Leonardo was born, and it sort of became the foundation of a lot of the understanding of Hermetic wisdom, which then spawned this sort of renaissance of Hermetic wisdom across Europe that then must have somehow had an impact on this 1459, initiation of Christian Rosenkreuz, which again, Christian, to me, it sounds like Christ Rose Cross, right? Basically
right.
The name. And it's almost like it's and I made the reference to Shakespeare because Shakespeare, we believe, and there's another show on Gaia that's done by my colleague, Alan Green, I work very closely with, where we're both working in cryptography and cryptology and finding the encryptions of all these Rosicrucians that included John Dee, Sir Francis Bacon, right, Edward de Vere, Kit Marlowe, that were probably the people that collectively were Shakespeare as a pen name.
Shakespeare
and
then the Bible, the King James version of the Bible that was published in 1611.
I see Shakespeare as sort of similar to Christian Rosenkreuz to a certain extent, where it's almost like it's almost like a position than anything else. And I'm fascinated by the whole subject matter here because, I mean, you probably know that the original name of Giza Plateau was Ros Tau, the Rose Cross. And Leonardo himself encrypted all of this in a letter. And if you look on the AMORC website, it claims that Leonardo was a member of the Rosicrucian movement in the early stages, which would have been, not long after Christian Rosenkreuz, probably in the 1470s, 1480s. And Leonardo was missing entirely from the Italian history from 1483 until 1487 in August. And what we had found is that in the Codex Atlanticus, Leonardo left a letter that was a draft letter to Sultan Qaitbay, who was the Sultan of Babylon, which is the original name of Cairo. Babylon, Cairo. And that's where the baboon reference also comes to, significance. So Babylon is in today modern day Cairo. It's the old Cairo next to Mahdi, which is calendar. It's the old Cairo that also the Holy Family would have visited, when they were escaping to Egypt during the extermination order that was by Herod on the firstborn, male children. So this is also very significant because in this letter, Leonardo references having worked for the Sultan of Cairo, Babylon, Qaitbay, who many of the buildings that are still remaining standing from that period in Cairo were built by Rosicrucian polymaths that were brought over by Sultan Qaitbay. And that's why the buildings have this very unique characteristic that looks like Tuscan style. And you could see this in several of the Kite Bay buildings in Moss. They have a very unique architecture about them that's more European in its style. So, first of all, is all of this new to you, or had you heard all of this before?
Many of the details that you're talking about with your research are new to me. They're absolutely fascinating. And I love hearing what you're putting together. It's interesting that you talk about, the connection with the original name of Giza Plateau and about Old Egypt and the Mahdi region. As you may know, I've been extremely fortunate for the last 20 odd years to be associated with Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who actually lives in Mahdi and has the International Biogeometry Center in Mahdi. Again, this ancient center of the wisdom. And as an architect, he's really studied what are some of the energetic principles behind many of these designs. And so looking at it from a purely qualitative energetic perspective, what gets actually generated with this type of design work is something I found absolutely fascinating. It's a whole nother perspective on what's happening with the design, not just as a expression of some type of aesthetic, but actual energetic principles that are being expressed through this.
Yeah, I mean, geometry, I like to refer to it as, the music we experience with our eyes. And so this is one of the things that my work has led to, is understanding the slope angles of the pyramids and how they're all musical or harmonic relationships, and not just the pyramids that are in Giza, but literally all over the world. They all are complying with this strange, like, musical relationship, and that each pyramid has a different slope angle and therefore a different musical note resonance associated with it. And they're all the same notes that you would find in Pythagorean tuning, except using a 24-note scale instead of a 12-note scale.
Interesting, yes.
Which then combines all of the pentatonic scales into the Western scales. The Egyptians used a 24-note scale. The Indians used a 24-note scale. These are quarter tone scales. And we have a 24,000-year cycle, I believe. And so it's this average you've got on the long side of the 25,920-year cycle, and then on the short side of the cycle, it's only 22,000 years and cycle. So it'd be 11,000, so half of that, and 12,960, and the two added together come out to 24,000 years. So it's 11,040 years and 12,960 for each half, because time speeds up as we get through the other half of the cycle that we're now entering into. But what's fascinating about this is that all of it is reference to Rosicrucianism. And it's really interesting because a lot of people think that the letter that Da Vinci wrote that talks about him going in the cave was actually about him surveying the great Mount Taurus, which was supposed to be Mount Ararat in many people's minds. But the city that he was in was a city called Calindra, and he wrote about it in this letter. But there's no Calindra that exists on the Euphrates River the way he describes it. And yet he even has a drawing of it, and the drawing is matching exactly the part of the Nile River where Mahdi is today. And the original name of the Nile River I also found to be Gihon, which was the river that came out of the Garden of Eden. And I found a map by Fra Mauro that shows that the Nile is the Gihon River. So all of this is pointing to the great Mount Taurus is actually Bull Mountain, which is the hieroglyphic symbols of the Great Pyramid. And Ras Tau is just Taurus backwards. So all of this is sort of like connecting. And then we found that the Shakespeare writers were all encrypting the coordinates, even the geo-coordinates of the Giza Plateau into the cover of the sonnets. So all of this cryptography has been left by these Rosicrucians almost as if to be found through time. And so then I asked the question, what's so significant about this time right now? And why would these Rosicrucian polymaths have left so much information for us to find today?
Well, what I'd like to offer for that is to honor the Rosicrucians themselves by what they say is the significance of these time cycles and for the time that you're in right now. So, as I mentioned, in my view, the most advanced Rosicrucian in modern times ever to make themselves known to the public was Rudolf Steiner. And so when Steiner was giving out this incredible encyclopedia of esoteric knowledge in the early 1900s, which, when we put together all the volumes of either books that he wrote or the collected lectures into books, is over 350 volumes. It's a gigantic compendium of esoteric information, some of which simply can't be found anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
He then worked with people to build this modern Temple of the Grail in Dornach, Switzerland, which was the first Goetheanum, which got burned to the ground, and then they...
I think the rose represents or symbolizes the toroidal fields, these magnetic fields that contain this cosmos. And again, electromagnetic reality, expressed via light and sound, photons, phonons, whatever you want to call them. And so even the seventh chakra, the crown chakra, there is 1,000 petals, I believe it is. It has the most petals out of all these lotus flowers that are represented by the different chakra systems. The root chakra, the lowest chakra, connected to Saturn, which rules over Capricorn and Aquarius at the lowest level. It's a 2-petal one, so the lowest vibration as well. So there's no coincidences with that as well. Being connected to black or darkness or hell or the color red, the element lead, and but yeah, these are all. So I did, like I said, I went to Spain, I went to France, I went to Italy, I went to Montenegro, I went to Greece, I went to so many different places where I was going inside museums and cathedrals and different like the Pantheon rather, the Colosseum, so many different places. And again, I've been to Egypt before as well, but I did see some Egyptian hieroglyphs also within the obelisks, within certain fountains, even in Rome, which was very interesting to me. And you could see just how there are people that took over ruins, sacred buildings from other periods, from more ancient civilizations, and it's very clear with the Pantheon and these other buildings as well that this is what happened. But I do want to share, because I talk about the creation story and how a lot of these stories they connect the luminaries, the 7 original wandering stars or luminaries. I'm referencing my whiteboard, but the sun and the moon's travel path and the other luminaries within the zodiacal belt. So whether you are going off of a more solar calendar where it's 12 zodiac signs or 13 with Ophiuchus with the moon, then it is what it is. But that's just a reality. And so even when we went to the Galileo Museum, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. I noticed on the ground outside that people were walking over this. But take a look at this. This is a solar clock, whatever you want to call it. And there was even an obelisk in line with this line on the sidewalk that shows Cancer at the top or bottom, and then you've got Capricorn at the top or bottom as well. It's usually should be Cancer at the top and Capricorn at the bottom, because Saturn is the furthest away from the sun as well. So again, there's so many connections to that as well. But and then that's the sun's travel path through the other zodiac signs as it goes up, and then again it's repeat, and then the circular path the sun creates, the circular path that the sun travels creates a sine wave or the analemma. Anyway, and so. And yeah, and so I saw it just outside the Galileo Museum, and then again in I forget what museum this is. What it was in Italy, but anyways, another solar dial. The sun's travel path through the 12 zodiac signs, or apostles, or titans, or tribes. And I could talk about the Christ oil and stuff like that as well, but I won't, because I might get to
They
it.
built it again out of concrete instead of wood. But he was giving lectures there, and he said to the people that were gathered, he said, the knowledge that I'm giving out right now, this huge amount of previously hidden Rosicrucian information, is not so much for us right now. It's for the people that are coming at the end of the century, the people that are coming at the time that we're at right now. He
Wow.
said this is going to be a major turning point in time. It's a particular coming together of many different time cycles. So within the Rosicrucian work, there's a whole variety of different time cycles that all are like their own energetic waves. And at certain points, they combine together and form something spectacular. So one of the ideas of this is that, according to the Rosicrucians, with an interesting support specifically from the Babaji lineage in the Himalayas and through the work of Babaji's student Sri Yukteswar in his book called The Holy Science.
Holy Science. Mm-hmm.
That they talk about the end of the Kali Yuga is 1899. And so that's like a major turning point right there. The end of the Kali Yuga with the 4 Yuga cycle from the Himalayan tradition, and that is opening up this new period. Now that also intersects with their understanding of time cycles, where the amount of time that it takes the sun's visible position at the spring equinox to move through one sign of the zodiac, the Platonic month, so to speak, 2,160 years, is divided into 7 different archangelic ages, in which it's like an alchemical cycle. It's a process in which it goes from one stage to another stage for the alchemical process. And that this being the time of the highest of the archangelic forces, which is the Michaelic, which is the sun forces. So those two things are coming together, as well as other energetic activities, with the idea that Steiner was talking about. Is this is something that became known as the Michael prophecy amongst the Rosicrucians that worked with Steiner. He said the end of the century is going to have the greatest mass incarnation of initiates in human history. It's going to be such a significant time that everybody's going to want to come at the same time. Steiner talked a lot about the Platonists and the Aristotelians, and about how they would do their work somewhat cyclically, like the Platonists would come, the Aristotelians would come. They said that for the first time, they're all coming at the same time at the end of this century. And so he's giving out this knowledge for this particular time. Now, this also relates to their understanding of what they refer to as mechanical occultism. Mechanical occultism is their much longer term perspective on what's happening today with all of our modern technologies, how fast everything is going. And you could see it was the end of Kali Yuga. 1899 was the beginning of all of the growth of our new technologies, the electrification of the planet and everything that's developed in technology so rapidly since then. And so a lot of this has to do with how are we going to put an impulse into this rapid generation of new technology. If we can modify gene sequences, if we can create artificial intelligence that's embodied in robots that are going to start taking over the planet, all these things, we have to make sure that this doesn't sail off into desolate waters. This has to be something that we move to something that's very positive and life-affirming. Now, there's also the idea here that in addition to these external developments, which are now accelerated in the technological physical realm, we also have certain aspects of acceleration in the possibilities of human consciousness and energy development, what we might call human spiritual development, that we have the possibility now for types of development that can be very, very rapid. But there's always counter forces at the same time. So just as it's possible to have very rapid spiritual evolution during this time, we also see that there's a mass problem right now with attention deficit disorder, with people having a hard time even thinking clearly and being able to concentrate, and having difficulty keeping up with modern culture in a way that does not lead to depression and to various types of internal debilitation. So again, I could go on about more aspects of this, but the general upshot of it, based on your question, is that there's an understanding that we're at a critical point right now where we have all of these great initiates from the past, because we have to be very clear that Rosicrucianism, like many ancient spiritual traditions, believes very much in reincarnation. So that there's the idea that these initiates have been here before,
Energy
and they're
transfer.
all coming now for the next octave of their work in a particular part of an alchemical cycle. Now, one part of this that I find really fascinating is just looking empirically at the release of esoteric information on the planet in the last 100 years. I often like to use the anecdote about the way that one of the most advanced internal alchemy systems on the planet, which is the Chinese Taoist internal alchemy, was very, very hidden. Even in the early 1980s, if you wanted to learn some of the higher alchemical internal alchemy formulas of the Taoists, like what they call the union of Kan and Li, how to bring together fire and water
Hmm.
powers in the body to transform the subtle bodies, you had to pay $10,000 in gold to somebody around Los Angeles to be taught that one thing. But now you can buy it in a book for like 1995. So even in the last few decades, there's been a release of stuff that was incredibly secret previously. But now it's just being released by all these different traditions. The Tibetans never before released the type of advanced tantric knowledge that they're releasing now. Same thing for the knowledge from India and so many great cultures around the world.
Even the Vatican, I was just there, and they've made a decision to release every text in the Vatican library. They're
Wow.
doing a massive project to scan, high resolution scan every single thing, and it's all going to be available online.
That's incredible. That is, for an organization like that has been very connected to secrecy for so long, that is amazing. So, one thing I like to say about this situation is that this is a time of a great blessing and a curse. The great blessing is that we've had this unprecedented release of formerly highly secret, very hidden esoteric knowledge to where people can access it now. But the curse is that it takes a tremendous amount of discernment and energy to plow through it all, find what's accurate, what's not accurate, and what is partly accurate but has some type of knuckleball in it that will spin it off in a direction that may not be quite right, to discern all that and put it into some type of workable system that people can actually apply in their daily life to lead to a personal evolution, a spiritual evolution that actually is capable of being stabilized and something the person can really integrate and go to a higher stage at a stable level from that point
Becoming
on. So,
enlightened. It always talks about light, becoming enlightened or accessing the like the oil, the Christ oil, which is why there are so many different religions too, or civilizations that anoint people on the forehead with oil, to represent that it's symbolic, and it's by leading a life, by following certain rules or codes of conduct, like the seven Noah codes or the Ten Commandments, or insert whatever codes here that you want. There's so many different ones. Um, and just how to do that, and looking at the seven deadly sins and their connection to the luminaries as well. And pride, for example, being connected to the sun, Leo, lion, just like a lion's pride. And so I'm just going to reinforce the sun's travel path, because I've talked about this before, but this is what it does on on a daily and annual basis. And depending on what ring it's traveling or circuit it's traveling within, there's going to be variations, right? And not all the zodiac signs are the same size. And it doesn't take as long, for example, for the sun or the other luminaries to travel through Scorpius or Capricornus as it does in Virgo, for example, which is 42 days versus 19 or 16, depending on what you look at, which sign. And so people have just divided it up to make it more simplified. But again, not perfect, but if we understand the actual cosmos and what Eudoxus and people like him were teaching, like Hypatia, then this would make a lot more sense. So this is an astrological wheel. I consider it an astronomical wheel as well. And so you have it where, as we observe here on Earth, that the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, and it's at its highest point during when you make up the sine wave, which I can show as well. But it's on or around the 20th of June, when the sun travels from Gemini to Cancer. So it's on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer is when it's at its highest point during the summer months. Where in the northern region, obviously it's this, in the southern region, it's their winter months because the sun is furthest away. But again, for where 90% of the population lives, this applies. So anyways, rises in the east, sets in the west, and it meets its highest point where it's the hottest and the brightest at noon, at its zenith, where it's directly overhead. And this is more prominent or more obvious during the equinoxes, so the spring and fall equinoxes, where we experience equal amount of day and night within the northern and southern regions of this contained environment. So, anyways, and then it's at its lowest point at midnight, when you look at the clock, this divine clock, and but also it's at its lowest point during the winter solstice on or around the 21st of December of every single year, depending on if it's a leap year or a non-leap year, and where it's traveling the Tropic of Capricorn. So this is why there's so many different religions that I've shared, or great scientists from the past that show like these solar dials, and they show Cancer and Capricorn at the top and bottom to represent the extremes. And then it also they also share the solstices, so they were very much tracking astronomy for many thousands of years. And so rise in the east and sets in the west. So anyways, and so you have Aries, which is for the clock between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. So the sun apparently travels approximately 15 degrees every hour, approximately 30 degrees every 2 hours. So through the astronomical signs, if they're neatly divided up into these different sections of 12 and 30, and this is where we get the circumference of 24,901 miles in circumference, or approximately 40,000 kilometers in circumference. And but this has to do with the sun's travel path at its zenith and at its furthest extremes, and it has nothing to do with the actual size of the Earth. But anyways, I'm already going on a tangent. So from 6 to 8 a.m., and then just like the sun in astrology, like it goes from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer to Leo to Virgo. This is like throughout time, right? The sun has done this. This is how people can find out their sun sign and their moon sign and their rising sign, etc. It's where the luminaries were fixed in place at your time of birth. But anyways, and then you have here again. This is at noon, so at the sun's zenith, or the highest point in the sky, going from Gemini into Cancer, and then the sun sets at 6 p.m. when the sun enters into Libra, cardinal air sign. Oh, and these are cardinal signs as well. So Cancer is a cardinal water sign. Capricorn at the top here is a cardinal earth sign. Aries is a cardinal fire sign, and Libra is a cardinal air sign, like I already said. And when you connect them, it forms a cross. So again, this is the sun's travel path through the zodiacal belt on a daily basis. And then here at midnight is when the sun is traveling from Sagittarius to Capricorn, or Capricornus. And then you also see here on this wheel, I don't know if you can see it, but so if I just put it where it should be, where Aries is in the east, and the sun travels to its highest point here when it's going from Gemini to Cancer at noon, solar noon, setting in the west at 6 p.m. Again, this is where we experience our darkness between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., with midnight being the lowest point, and also representative of the winter solstice when you map it out. And so you see here that the sun rules over Leo and the moon rules over Cancer. And then you see here at the bottom, which is why it's not a mistake, that you have here Saturn ruling over Capricorn and Aquarius. And then you have, if you go off of the original luminaries, the 7 original luminaries, Uranus and Neptune's not part of that, neither is Pluto. And so you have that where Mars rules over Aries and Scorpio. And you've got it where Aries is a masculine sign, Scorpio is the feminine sign. You've got the positive and the negative, the magnetic, the electric, the yin and the yang here. And the same thing for Capricorn and Aquarius. You have Capricorn as the feminine, negative, electrical sign, and then you have Aquarius as the masculine, positive, yang sign. And both these again ruled over, Saturn rules over them. Mars rules over, okay, then we got Jupiter. Jupiter rules over, Sagittarius and Pisces. And Mercury rules over Venus and Gemini. I want to look at my sign. Virgo and Gemini. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Saturn rules over Capricorn and Aquarius. Jupiter rules over Sagittarius and Pisces. Mars rules over Scorpio and Aries. Venus rules over Libra and Taurus. Mercury rules over Virgo and Gemini. The moon rules over Cancer. Sun rules over Leo. Again, this is like so many different civilizations that teach that. And this divine clock, which is recreated in so many different esoteric works. Manly P. Hall, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, Albert Pike, so many others. Anyway, I don't even know if you saw that. Did you see that wheel? I don't know. I'm going to pull up another one just to show you the travel path of the sun. Maybe this one first. Let's just keep pulling up. Let's try again. It keeps on bumping me out. Hold on here. I took off my Alex Gleason map. Okay. Slow morning. There we go. Okay. So this is just a top-down view of the sun's travel path as observed on Earth. So you've got the North Pole here at the center where Polaris is, the CNS, the celestial North Pole, which is where the Big Dipper and Little Dipper, or the Big Dipper, it travels around. And it's at its most extremes during the equinoxes and the solstices. And I've shared that as well. And when you look at it, it possibly looks similar to the swastika, then anyway, which in some cultures is a symbolic of the tree of life, or of love, or of peace, or of balance and harmony, etc., etc. And that got ruined. So you've got the Tropic of Cancer here, which is the smallest circle or circuit that the sun travels, which is when the sun is closest to the North Pole or the center of the Earth. Again, this is based on my theories. And where we experience our summer months, the longest days and shortest nights, culminating on the 20th of June of every single year during the summer solstice. And then travels back on its circular path towards the equatorial ring, which is right here. This red one, the equator. Okay, and this is when on or around the 20th of March of every year and the 22nd of September of every year, where we have the spring and fall equinoxes. This is where the sun is traveling at its zenith above. It falls directly above. Not falls directly above, that makes no sense, but it's directly above like these countries, these regions during this period. So Ecuador, Congo, etc., Sumatra, Borneo, and then from that, the sun doesn't go past 0 degrees of the horizon when it's going from the equator during the spring to the summer months, and so this is the furthest extreme we see the sun on its travel path. Goes back, and this is where you don't see the sun in the southern regions during certain positions of the sun being here at this extreme. And so anyways, you've got the polar nights. That's what you call them. The polar nights in the south, in Antarctica and in southern regions are during the between the 20th of March and the 22nd of September, depending on if it's a leap year or non-leap year. And then you start to see the sun, and it's at its peak where the angular I forget what you call it, my goodness, but anyways, it's observed, like it takes up most of the space, like it creates a larger arc in the sky. It's more observed within the sky. 180 degrees, you see like 46 or something like that, or 47% of an arc, whereas in other times it's significantly smaller. And again, it lines up also, interestingly enough, with its travel path at its most extreme. So 23.4 degrees south latitude of the equatorial ring, where it's at its zenith at noon, you have it traveling the Tropic of Capricorn, and I believe, again, which is a larger circuit, a larger travel path. So again, I'm not saying that this is a 100% accurate map. I'm just using this as a frame of reference. And when you map that out, it creates, again, the analemma, and the analemma being wider at the bottom, which shows, again, necessarily that this would be a larger loop. And so the sun would necessarily, just to have that, just to maintain that 24-hour clock, it would need to be traveling slower on its smaller rings, and it would have to be traveling faster on its more extreme rings. And I'm just going to look for, I'm just going to shut down a few things here. So I want to share the, when you map it out, the sine wave. I have so many photos though. And it also is connected to the electrical magnetic fields interaction with the luminaries on an annual basis as well, which has been measured by Walter Russell. I think there's a connection to that. And let me see here. It's so hard to find. Bear with me. Okay. I know I have it, so I'm just gonna, because I did send it over to Grok to assess, because I wanted it to duplicate using another, like using the path of the moon, but it gave me terrible diagrams. Made no sense. Okay, so I found it. All right. So when you map out, and you can do this yourself, this would be accepted on the for the heliocentris as well. So this is the sun's travel path. So this is what I was talking about. And when you like put this bottom circle underneath here, this is what creates the circuit path that the sun takes. And so here you have the March equinox, 0 degrees, equatorial ring, and this is the sun's travel path through the year, where you have it at its highest point on the sine wave graph during the summer solstice, and then it heads back down where it hits Libra during the fall equinox, and then drops below the equatorial ring, 0 degrees here, 23.4 degrees south latitude, the Tropic of Capricorn. This is the Tropic of Cancer up here. This is the Tropic of Capricorn. And 23.4 degrees south latitude, which is like, it's a measurable distance, by the way, because degrees can be transferred into to miles and kilometers, etc. And anyways, and then it does the loop over and over again every single year. And I won't get into the precession of the equinoxes, which is also very interesting. 1 degree every 72 years. Supposed to set back into Aries at like 5,400 something BC. Sorry, AD. Anyway, back to the Rosicrucian mysteries, which again, I think are magnetic fields.
So again, I think this is an incredible time to be alive, that so much information is being released, but it is a huge challenge to be able to pull the key pieces out of it and to put it into a coherent framework that actually is important for, like with the work you're doing, reclaiming our spiritual history, seeing how it all fits together, but also for every person figuring out what is going to be their personal path. Who am I? Why am I here? What did I come to do in this particular lifetime?
So, okay, do you think it's possible then that with all these avatars returning, right, for the grand finale of the, or the beginning of this new age of the age of Aquarius, that maybe some of these Rosicrucian polymaths were leaving themselves things in the future that's really just simultaneous to now, so they could find it and get a head start in their next octave of experience?
I absolutely think that's the case. There's the whole idea that what is embedded in the cathedrals in Europe are like books written in stone that there's
Uh-huh.
so much incredible knowledge in what's been left behind. I absolutely agree and believe that initiates of the past have left these markers, have left this information in all kinds of ways that not only other people could follow the trail, but they themselves
They
at a
could
later
find,
time
right.
upon reappearance could do it. Now, at the same time, I don't want to be too holly-go-lightly about the whole thing because we do have challenges. Things don't always go right. There have
Mm-hmm.
been various obstacles to beneficial growth for humanity in the past that's been put in the way. And so, if we take a look at how this has developed over time, then we do need to be aware that it won't just automatically all come together into a fantastic new age. People had better be quite active because there's also going to be very active forces that are trying to suppress this. And this has been true for a long time. I mean, not to be too controversial, but I think we could look at history and say the Catholic Church acted at certain times to
Oh
suppress
yeah,
information and
for
beneficial
sure.
things that could have come out perhaps at an earlier time. And so, one thing we have to look at then is the way that some of that information had to be brought out or preserved in such a way, like putting it into the cathedrals of Europe in stone, that the people wouldn't necessarily be hunted down and killed for transmitting the information, and that it wouldn't just be a book that would be burned or something of that kind. Now, I think this then connects to our mutual interest and appreciation of what sacred geometry is, which I would say was true for many ancient traditions and many ancient initiates, because again, I believe that this is the thought forms in the mind of God. This is the blueprint of all of creation. And
Mm-hmm.
so it leads to anyone who walks this path beginning to appreciate the significance of pattern recognition. And once you can recognize the pattern, then
Yep.
even though it may appear in slightly different cultural context, you can see that there are connections between them. And
Mm-hmm.
that this aspect of pattern recognition is something I think is absolutely essential for everyone. I mean, we can't even make any progress in our own lives with being able to take care of our own health, have a healthy relationship, anything of that kind, if you don't know the patterns that rule human health, human relationships, whatever it might be. So I think the great gift of sacred geometry for people is helping people to begin to develop a sense for it, to become conscious of pattern recognition, and to, like you're doing right now with the historical reconstruction, see what the pattern is and what it's leading to, and also just for people's general lives, how to put together the pieces of the financial, health, relationship, other aspects of life into what's going to be the most beneficial for them.
You know, it just occurs to me, I'm looking at this vector equilibrium that's basically behind you. And it's funny that I've got the same thing kind of, but in different form. I'm sitting here at my desk with it.
Yeah.
And you've really made me think about something because, you know, the vector equilibrium is unique in that it is equidistant from every vertex. And that there are, 14 faces and 12 vertices and 24 edges on the vector equilibrium. Now, I had discovered a pattern and published it because I'm a pattern guy like you.
Yeah.
And published it related to prime numbers in 2018 and found a new type of number called quasi-prime that helped me predict prime numbers. And these
Wonderful.
are numbers that are divisible by prime numbers that are larger than 3. So they start with 5 and go up from there. And so it separates out and it creates a Templar cross, like literally a Templar cross in mod 24. And this means that, in the modular positions of mod 1, mod 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, and then 23, you end up with prime numbers, right? All the prime numbers end up in exactly those positions. And the numbers that are not prime are only divisible by prime numbers that are larger than 3, right? And of course, 24ness is associated directly with this because every prime number over 3 squared is a multiple of 24 plus 1 without exception.
Wonderful.
So this 24ness is related to the edges. So you could flatten this out and it would be a mod 24 wheel, which we find all over Egypt. The mod 24 wheel is something we find everywhere. The 24 notes of music, Buckminster Fuller, You probably know we may have a mutual friend in Marshall Lefferts, who made the book Cosmometry, and he's been in this field for a long time, and basically he did a whole thesis around this. But now I'm thinking about the 14 faces versus the 12 vertices. The 12 vertices, and the center point being like the Jesus character, right? And then you've got the 12 vertices around it, which would be like the 12 apostles, right? And we see that inside the Last Supper painting. But then in addition to that, the 14 faces, which then gives you this question about the 13th constellation. It's almost like it's there, but it's not there. The 13th would be Ophiuchus, and the 14th would be its direct mirrored opposite, which is Orion. And the esoteric symbolism of Orion is directly tied to Osiris. And of course, that's another Jesus figure throughout history, the resurrection, and through Horus, etc., the Eye of Horus. This vector equilibrium that's behind you has been triggering the heck out of me just looking at it. And, I used to work a lot with Nassim Haramein. That's like the main structure of all of his work.
Yes.
And so are we just looking at, is it possible that we're literally just looking at a deconstruction of a vector equilibrium and we're calling it time?
I think that there is a tremendous amount that we can get into regarding the relationship between the sacred geometry of space and time. That's something that's always fascinated me. There's definitely a sacred geometry of time, just like there is of space. When I work in biogeometry with Dr. Karim from Egypt, there's very much a biogeometry of space and time, having to do with energetic principles and energetic rhythms. Now, again, for me, the thing that makes sacred geometry sacred is that it is the foundation of the world. It is the invisible blueprint of everything. Everything comes out of it. And again, I think of it the way it's spoken about in the ancient world, that it was the thought forms in the mind of God. And that's really what we're accessing them. It's kind of like when some of this was being re-accessed by the Theosophists in the early 1900s. And they had these books like Mathematics of the Cosmic Mind. There's this whole understanding that the Greeks had as well, that we're really accessing something at a deeper level that really exists, that it has a consciousness of its own, that, we talk about things in modern science as being self-organizing. But to me, to some degree, that's an empty placeholder of a concept. Okay, it's self-organizing, but something has to be an organizing principle for it to come together. It has to exist on some physical or energetic or consciousness level. And then you look at the works like Amit Goswami's work on the self-aware universe, showing all these aspects of modern physics that are really showing that consciousness is the basis. And then the energetics and the physical crystallization come after that. So what I find so fascinating about this and what you're talking about with the importance of the vector equilibrium, to me, somebody like Buckminster Fuller had that state of consciousness that we could really perceive what are the fundamental blueprint patterns behind all of creation. And there's all of these amazing things that's embedded in his work, like the form of light itself being a tetrahedron that he has in his work. Or that when you look at the Platonic solids, it doesn't necessarily just end at the Platonic solids. He shows a continuation of the sequence into things like the rhombic dodecahedron. And that this is like a more evolved form that's going to come later. Just like he predicted the form of the C60, buckyball, Buckminster Fullerene type
Hexapentacus,
of
truncated
things.
icosa.
So, yes, I find this absolutely fascinating, that we really get down to core sacred geometry blueprints, like you're talking about with flattening the cube octahedron. And then the numbers come up, the pattern comes up, and also the grid lattice comes up. So to me, grid lattices are one of the most fascinating concepts in all of existence, that it really has to do with what is the energetic matrix behind everything. So when I began to work with Dr. Karim and the Egyptian biogeometry, a lot of it is what is the way that the energy is moving through certain nodal points and energetic connection points in any location. And then according to the way that you then use the forming process to like form a wall of an architectural structure, the numbers that you use, the angles that you use, the shapes that you use are all resonating principles that will resonate with something at a higher level, just like energetic signal and an antenna, and that you can then start manifesting this to, again, as above, so below, use the Hermetic principle to use the same patterns that we use to create our world, but now doing it consciously here. One thing I found really fascinating in the very beginning of Rudolf Steiner's work, this was 1900 something, 1904 maybe, he gave a series of lectures as he was just starting to teach publicly, and it was called The Temple Legend. And so he talked about the way that what the original Freemasons who built the cathedrals, what they actually understood about their work. He said this was something that they called the royal art. And the royal art of these original Masons was that they were learning the design principles that higher spiritual beings used to manifest the physical world. And then they were replicating it in their own designs to then create these initiation books written in stone with the cathedrals of Europe. But this idea of the royal art has always been something that has tremendously inspired me. That one way that Steiner put it, he said that to create the world we live in now, beings beyond the human level had to create it. There's higher spiritual principles, energetic principles that manifested according to these blueprints, everything in creation. But the way that things work in the microcosm of you have a parent and you have a child, and the child becomes a parent and has a child, etc., that following that same principle, what Steiner pointed out is that the original Freemasons understood and believed, and this was also handed down to the Rosicrucians in their design work, that the next era of creation in the world has to be created by human beings, because all this work has been done to create us here, to be able to understand this and to get to this next level, which is why sacred geometry is a sacred and previously secret art in virtually every great tradition around the planet, so that it's going to be up to us to understand that principle and then apply it to transform the world. And that then becomes the New Jerusalem concept from the New Testament. The New Jerusalem is something that we will form using these divine blueprints and applying it to the world around us. And now we see it's not just building a sacred temple. It's going to have to be integrated into things like how we create modern artificial intelligence systems and all of the new types of breakthroughs that we have with genetic engineering and things like this. If we don't honor the original blueprint in a way that's going to be a natural evolutionary progression on what's happened before, if we just start doing egotistical things to try to manipulate power and no longer save the original blueprint, then it could sail off into very desolate waters where life itself could be difficult to sustain on the planet.
So maybe you could, if you could try to summarize the general belief system. You mentioned that Rosicrucianism is sort of like an esoteric Christianity of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would be the basic belief system of Rosicrucianism in your best way to describe it, and like the elevator pitch of Rosicrucianism?
Okay, I'll do my best. As you might imagine, as you know from your work in sacred geometry, it's a pretty vast thing to summarize.
It's very vast. It's very vast.
But I'll give a few basic things. So one of these, and you touched on this a moment ago, about Christian Rose Cross, that the whole idea of the Rose Cross, this was considered to be the recognition symbol amongst Rosicrucians. Not necessarily always represented physically, but they would believe that it could actually be projected as a thought form in a way that would resonate with other people and higher realities, which is another topic. But that the whole concept behind it is that the image is of a black cross that has 7 red roses growing out of the black cross. Now, the 7 red roses are essentially the 7 energy centers or chakras of Himalayas that are then able to fully blossom, the lotus flowers of the human energy body, in a structuring of the human energy system that allows us to reach a higher state. And so the black cross is like the concept from Plato about the world soul is crucified on the world cross, and the whole idea that the black cross is a crucifixion. And so in a sense, we're all crucified on the black cross of the physical body. And this opens us up to tremendous potential suffering. once you're trapped in a physical body and being tortured in various ways, it's the possibility of great suffering. But it's through the physical incarnation process that we then go through this initiatory experience. We go through an evolution of consciousness to where we structure the subtle body to a higher level. And this will allow us to get to a future state that is beyond where we are right now. And that then becomes the deeper teachings about types of initiation practices, ways to develop the consciousness and energy, ways to preserve it within the energy body. This goes back to Egypt, to be able to go through the gate of death and not lose the structuring of the subtle body. That's the pearl of great price, the structure of the subtle body. And so, again, it's understanding that we may have to suffer on the physical plane. This relates to esoteric Buddhism, which in some ways is very deeply connected to esoteric Christianity. You may suffer here. This is a place of suffering, according to the Buddhists. But they don't let that stop them from doing what's right and having mindfulness and having loving kindness to help all beings on the planet. And like the Buddhists have the Bodhisattva vow, where you'll pledge to continue to incarnate until all sentient beings attain enlightenment, although that may entail suffering of various kinds. And so this Rosicrucian idea is somewhat related to it. Now, with us then being incarnated into the physical body, the physical world then becomes the thing that we are supposed to work on to use the principles that we understand, what we think of as sacred geometry, of these divine principles, everything that's within a divine mathematics and sacred geometry and all of these principles and patterns, that we need to understand them consciously, and then we can recreate the world with the royal art into the form where it not only works the best for all human beings, but for all life, and to move the earth itself as a living being up to its next evolutionary state. Now, within that process, then, it's understood within Rosicrucianism that we go through multiple lifetimes, and even within a single lifetime, we go through all types of different initiatory trials, different experiences that we have to overcome. But that's the thing that gives us the new level of understanding, the new level of internal strength. It's like spiritual weightlifting. You get stronger if it doesn't destroy you as we keep moving forward. So then there's like a whole body of work on what are the initiatory practices that we would do to move our consciousness up to a higher level. One of their ideas related to what they call the 6 essential exercises for a person to move to a higher level of development. Like, this is something that you would do to make sure that you had fundamental development, and then the more peripheral things would fit into place. And so the 6 essential exercises are 6 different consciousness exercises that we do that they believe will activate 6 different lotus flowers of the 12-petal lotus of the heart. So now we're getting back to the 12 again. So with the power of the 12, in the Himalayas, they teach that the heart is a 12-petal lotus. According to the Rosicrucians, in our past incarnations, in the past suffering and striving of human beings that came before us, we developed 6 of the lotus flowers of the heart chakra. The other 6 need to be developed through 6 specific exercises. Now, the idea of this is that once we do develop it and all 12 lotus petals of the heart chakra become activated,
which is connected to the color green, which is the center color in the 7 colors of the rainbow, connected to Venus, and the element being copper. And copper also oxidizes, turns green, and humans see more shades of green than any other color, which is very interesting to me.
the key thing about that is that then the heart will become an organizing center of a person's body of energy, with the idea being that we don't actually have an organizing center of our body of energy at the moment. We have various energy centers, but one of the key concepts of Rosicrucianism that I then found reflected in the Egyptian ancient knowledge and what I learned from Dr. Karim with the modern biogeometry from Egypt is that it's all about a center. Everything, every grid pattern has to have a center. And then that center can connect to other centers and create the matrices. So in the human energy body, the core center is the human heart. And once that gets activated, then all the other centers can then have their activities aligned and harmonized and create the grid pattern of the human energy body that then allows for higher development. So that's one particular take on what's the core beliefs of the Rosicrucians.
Mm-hmm.
There's many other aspects, of course, that I didn't get into in that quick elevator pitch.
That's interesting. The 12 petals, lotus flower petals of the heart. I mean, if I think about it, I tend to think of it this way, and this is not from Rosicrucian teaching, it's just been my own study of Hermeticism.
Yes.
It's like our spine, starting from the base or the root, goes up to the crown. And I think of it as judgment versus love. So the way I think of it is like if the first chakra would be 1 out of 7 love and 6 out of 7 judgment. The second chakra, the sacral chakra, becomes 2 out of 7 love. It's like a scale. And then 5 out of 7 judgment. And then the third chakra becomes the solar plexus, and that's 3 out of 7 love and 4 out of 7 judgment. And then we tip the scale at the heart. But these are all, and it becomes 4 out of 7 love and then 3 out of 7 judgment. And then the throat chakra becomes 5 out of 7 love and 4 or 2 out of 7 rather judgment. And then 1 out of 7 or 6 out of 7 love for the pineal gland, and then the combination of pineal and pituitary creates the crown chakra, and then you're in love consciousness. But the major first love consciousness, when we finally tip the scale beyond the heart, going into the throat, and the throat having like 3 layers: self-awareness, self-actualization, and then self-transcendence. And that's when magic returns, and manifestation, and being able to voice things into reality, and creation and leadership. And so the next chamber in the Great Pyramid that we predicted based on Vitruvian Man, because we found it's an encryption, he's cut into 14 parts, just like
Osiris.
This.
Yes.
Right. And actually, when you overlay the Great Pyramid on top of it, you find that each of the lines that Da Vinci left on the body of Osiris, Orion, is actually exactly where the chambers are within the pyramid. And then it predicted exactly where the next chamber would be, which is at the throat chakra line. And they just announced, Jean-Pierre Houdin, a famous archaeologist and architect, French, that's on the Scan Pyramid project, basically just outlined mirror matching exactly what we had said in Codex 4 years ago, where this next chamber is. And I've been in there through astral travel, and it's the Metathrone, which is the throne beyond, right? And it's almost as if it's.
I need a lot more proof for astral travel. Like I'm still not buying it. I don't know.
Described in the book of Revelations 4, where it says there's a throne that's surrounded by the 24, right, aeons, which are all of these angelic beings. But it's almost like if you looked at it from the position of the throat chakra chamber, which is just above the king's chamber, and it becomes like a glass crystal that then opens up like a portal in a way. And then it references emerald and jasper stone and sardine stone.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, this is all very much related to where we're going now as some people in the world start the ascension process into the throat chakra activation. And to me, it's very much related to this overcoming or transcendence of judgment and this duality plane of existence where I agree very much with the Tibetan Buddhists and Taoists that we have suffering here, that is the real philosopher's stone, the realization that the square root of 2 is the basis of all musical notes, literally all musical notes. And that's why I was sort of looking at all this stuff related recently to the discussion with Terrence Howard and with Joe Rogan, where he talks about, 1 times 1 equals 2. Well, if that was really the case, then the universe would literally cease to exist because there could be no musical notes, because every musical note is just, 12 over 1 root of 2. And then the next musical note and the scale is, 12 over 2 root of 2, and then 12 over 3 root of 2, and 12 over 4. And then you get to 12 over 6 root of 2, which is the square root of 2. 1.4142, and that splits exactly down the center, creates the yin yang of all existence, and every musical note in equal temperament is exactly this mathematics. So if 1 times 1 really equaled 2, then we would have no differentiation of anything, and everything would just be 1, which is fascinating as a concept, because I think, okay, maybe Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and what the last year's Nobel Prize was awarded for, entanglement, is more that 1 times 1 could be whatever you believe it's going to be, right? It like literally could be that, but we're in this realm where it is very much striated and broken down according to our chakras and everything, where we're basically going through this exact mathematical matrix. And it's almost as if we are simply dimensionally limited avatars in a mind-based simulation to find ourselves and remember who we are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great.
I mean, is that consistent with how Rosicrucians actually see it as well?
Well, definitely the last thing you touched upon is connected with this. I would say that for the Rosicrucians, one thing that you'll sometimes find with this idea about us living in the simulation, the way it's presented sometimes in modern times, is like we got kind of stuck here by the demiurge or something, and we can just kind of bust out. The Rosicrucian concept is that certain higher beings went to a lot of trouble to create this world for us, so that as young spiritual beings, we would have a physicalized experience that allowed us to be more self-aware to go through this. And that once we get to the point where we have used all of the experiences we can have with the reflective power of our 5 senses to make us self-aware and go through everything on this plane, we'll get to the place then that we can function fully consciously without a physical vehicle. We don't have a physical body. Things like astral travel and consciousness experiences are a intermediary step. Yeah, that in time it's going to get to where in between incarnations, where you don't have a physical body, you'll be much more fully conscious. So the idea is that there are latent organs of spiritual perception within the body. The chakras, the acupuncture points, all of these energy centers. You know, if you go back to the original Sanskrit for the chakras, the original Chinese for the acupuncture points, they all have particular names that relate to a function, a power, a siddha that they carry. So it's a differentiated power. And so as they get activated, these are like latent organs of spiritual perception that are actually within the energy body.
These are like the siddhas and the granthis, right?
Yeah. So that we can then, having activated the latent organs of spiritual perception, which again is the languaging of the Rosicrucians, that we can then operate fully consciously outside of a physical body. But if we were to go prematurely, then what we would find is that we might be like Helen Keller in the physical world. In our experience of the spiritual world, we might be deaf, dumb, and blind, and we may have to be guided by higher beings because we haven't developed enough of our own latent organs of spiritual perception to be able to operate fully at the higher level. And you see these pictures in things like the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Light, which we call the Egyptian Book of the Dead, where like the person who's being led into the hall of judgment for the afterlife and these things, they're kind of bent over and they're kind of lame and being like led by a higher being into this chamber. And it kind of shows that they don't have the ability to really navigate it by themselves. So there's a whole aspect here about appreciating the experience of being in a physical body in a physical world, although it hurts sometimes, so that we can get to that higher level, that we can then operate outside of a physical body. But having the gift of physicality at this time allows us to develop those higher abilities, that higher consciousness.
It's as if the square root of 2, which is like the essence of duality, the infinite aspect of duality, is like a great blessing that we have to be able to learn how to transcend and remember our divine aspect. And to me, the square root of 3 becomes the divine aspect that is very beautiful, and it's embedded right inside of the vector equilibrium behind you, and it's the foundational basis of Metatron's cube. And so when you add the square root of 3, which is the divine aspect, to the square root of 2, which is the aspect of duality, it comes out to approximately pi. So it becomes full circle. So you could think of the diameter of 1, and then pi is the square root of 2 and the square root of 3 as the circumference, which is fascinating because when I started looking at that and I found that I wanted to know, okay, what percentage of the circle then of 360 degrees would be attributable to the square root of 2? Because 1.4142 plus 1.73205 is the square root of 3. That gives you 3.146. Now, I was really shocked to find that the percentage of that circle that comes out is like 0.449, but it comes out in degree reference as exactly 161.816 degrees. So it's a phi palindrome mirror to each other.
Yeah.
It turns, literally led the square root of 2 of duality into the golden number.
It's a beautiful revelation of the mathematics of the cosmic mind, for sure. Fantastic.
So it's like this without the context of the divine. Suffering is just suffering. It's like learning math without meaning. Math without meaning is tough to learn.
Yeah.
But math with meaning is divine communication.
And we are being communicated with. And so I'm just going to share some conversations with Grok because it's topical, because I have talked about the sun's travel path. I just wanted to make sure that I had it correctly. I showed you the astrological wheel, or the astronomical wheel, as I'd like to share it. And the sun's apparent travel path in both models, by the way, is where the sun appears or is observed as traveling from east to west, 15 degrees per hour, which is a measurable distance, is what I was saying. So that's where we're getting this 24-hour clock. This is where we're getting the circumference of the Earth allegedly being 24,901 miles in circumference, approximately 8,000 miles in diameter, approximately 4,000 miles, a little under, miles in radius. But I believe that this has to do with the measurements, the calculations of the sun at its zenith, at its furthest. It travels the Tropic of Capricorn, 23.4 degrees south latitude of the equatorial ring, or belt, that it travels within, and the other luminaries as well. And so that's approximately 1,038 miles for every 15 degrees per hour. And then it takes approximately 2 hours when you just divide it up in a nice little circle for 360 degrees, that the sun's travel path travels through the constellations every 2 hours. Okay, this divine clock. I believe this is what so many different ancient civilizations and cultures and recent ones are talking about, and in so many different esoteric communities as well.
I love that. Let me share a little bit with your audience about some of the things to illustrate this idea, and also the whole idea of pattern recognition that we have here. Because we were talking about before, I was talking about the way that the Rosicrucians view the heart as a
funnel,
an energetic principle that needs to be activated to create an organizing center for all the other activities in the energy body to be harmonized together. So if we go back to some of the fundamental teachings of the Jewish Kabbalah, with the understanding that many of those go back to ancient Egypt, because of course Moses was an initiate in the Egyptian temple, and that information came out. So you'll find certain things that tend to indicate that, for example, the tree of life in the Jewish Kabbalah had a form previously in ancient Egypt, and that many of these principles did as well. So one of the most remarkable texts of the Jewish Kabbalah is the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. Amazing text. And of course, one of the core concepts there is that there is in the classical Hebrew alphabet 22 letters, and the 22 letters are really each a divine force. And then they're referred to as flame letters when they're representing this divine power that each one has. And they bring out that the 22 letters are divided into 3 groups: the 3 mother letters, the 7 double letters, the 12 elemental letters. And they keep focusing on the 3, 7, and the 12 and how important this is. But like all these ancient texts, they don't necessarily tell you what the deeper teaching was, which you would have to receive verbally.
7 chakras, 7 days of the week, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 major elements, 7 deadly sins. Uh, and then you've got the 7 original luminaries, and they rule over the complete 12. So you've got 7 and 12.
Somebody in the tradition, they weren't going to put that in a text, but they're putting enough so that you could be reminded about it the next time you came back, if you got a hold of the text, or if you already were an initiate, then you could see the principle behind it. So the 3, 7, and 12 is something then that the Rosicrucians bring out as part
Moon
of
god.
the numerical geometric foundation of the human energy body and of our ability to operate as a conscious spiritual being in a physical sheath. Like they talk about in the Indian tradition, this is the sheath made of food, the physical body that we live in. So one thing that Steiner brought out, and this was like really a hidden Rosicrucian teaching before he gave it out publicly, which was one reason many people were upset with him at the time for revealing all these secrets, is that there's a particular numerical harmonic of 1, 3, 7, and 12. And so the 1 was considered to be too sacred in the ancient Jewish Kabbalah to be able to speak about directly. Just like you could never say the true name of God. It's
Right.
like, and you couldn't represent God in a visual form. That was like part of the Jewish tradition. But for the Rosicrucians, they say that it's actually not just 3, 7, 12, it's a 1, 3, 7, 12 harmonic. And that one way that this manifests as a creation blueprint is that it is telling you the number of anchor points for particular functions or subtle bodies within the human physical body, and then become clues to their location. So, for example, the 1 is considered to be related to what in the Himalayas is called the cave of Brahma. So the third ventricle of the brain, where you got the pineal and pituitary, and you've got the pulsation of the cerebral spinal fluid. So that is like the anchor.
The wedding hall.
Yeah, that's absolutely this core place where our consciousness is anchored in the physical body, and that's the 1. And that relates to our spirit core. Then the 3 relates to what we might think of in Western terms as the astral body of consciousness. And so that becomes the 3 primary energy centers in the body, which are understood as being in the head, the chest, and the abdomen. So in Rosicrucianism, it becomes thinking, feeling, and willing. But then you have with the Buddhist, it becomes thought, speech, and action. If you're with the Sufis, it becomes head, heart, and hands, because they don't like talking about the lower abdomen. They'll talk about the forces from lower abdomen animating the hands, so you don't get into sexual forces and things like that. There's all these different ways of representing these 3 primary force centers in the body. And that then becomes the 3 Dantian, the 3 elixir fields in the Taoist tradition for internal alchemy. So the foundation of internal alchemy in the Taoist tradition, which again I believe has some of the most advanced internal alchemy formulas in the world, is working in the upper Dantian with our consciousness field in the heart, for the middle Dantian, which is the balance point for the system, and then the lower Dantian for where not only sexual forces, but all Jing, all vitality, all the life force is in the lower abdomen. And then the lower Dantian becomes the place we're supposed to sink our energy in all these energetic practices so that our life force stays strong in the lower abdomen. So this becomes then a universal mystery when you understand, like, what's the significance of the 3? All these different traditions are working on alchemical formulas related to the 3 astral body centers and how to develop them further. Then the 7 is related to the etheric life body and becomes the 7 chakras that we know from the Himalayas. The 12 becomes related to what we find in medieval esotericism, where they'll show the 12 signs of the zodiac distributed all the way from Aries at the crown of the head to Pisces at the base of the feet, so that the zodiacal forces then become 12 different differentiated force centers in the human physical body. So the 1, 3, 7, 12 becomes then an understanding hidden inside of the Jewish Kabbalah, then explicated further by the Rosicrucians for understanding these different energy placements in the body and how they work.
And fun fact, so I think it starts with Aries, the cerebellum, because it being the start of the new year. I did have a photo of that up, a wheel that shows it. Because fun fact that Capricorn, it's the in some traditions it's the skeletal system. So I think that's also a connection with hell and with Satan and the devil and bones and skull and bones, etc. I think it's a representation of Saturn and Capricorn and Aquarius and possibly the winter solstice. Um, when we experience the most extreme versions of life. So here you go. So there's the wheel. Feet being Pisces, thighs Sagittarius. Taurus is the throat, the neck. Gemini is the arms, etc. Here's the wheel, though. Anyway, very interesting.
On different layers together as a complete system. Then when you go into the different pieces of it, all these other things begin to reveal themselves. So, for example, with the 7. So 7 is understood in some traditions as being related to time, like 7-year time cycles is something the Rosicrucians
7 days
work
in a
with.
week.
Yeah. And so related to the 7 is the idea that you've got the 1, 2, 3, and then you have the 4, and then you got the 5, 6, 7, and that the first and the 7th are reflections of each other. Everything's working in this mirror imaging idea. You see the same thing in some of the walls in Egypt, where on some of the walls you'll see like a figure walking upright, and then beneath them it's reflected and being inverted, going the other direction. So the first and the 7th are connected, the 2nd and the 6th, the 3rd and the 5th, but the 4th stands alone as a balance point. So that's the way that, for example, the Rosicrucians understand time cycles, and that they understand what's been happening on the Earth since the Atlantean period. So they understand there to be 7 post-Atlantean time periods. The first they call the old Indian Vedic tradition. And that's the time of the laws of Manu, the founding of the Vedic tradition, these types of things. Then the 2nd was the time of the Persian Zoroastrian tradition. Yep. The 3rd is the Egyptian, Chaldean, Babylonian. The 4th is the Greco-Roman. The 5th is our current European. The 6th will be a future epoch related to Eastern European. And then the 7th is a very complex topic to get into. But the whole idea here is that these things are all reflecting each other. 1st and the 7th, 2nd and 6th, 3rd and 5th. So that's one of the reasons that the Rosicrucians say we're so fascinated by Egypt today, is that we are living in the time that is the reflection of the Egyptian period. If you go and turn on the TV to see what's on, some Discovery Channel or A&E or something like that, the vast majority of historical documentaries are about ancient Egypt, way more than for a lot of other ancient cultures. We're fascinated by ancient Egypt. That's because we are regaining the knowledge and the information we need from that time period, because that's the time we're living in a reflection of. Where it's kind of a mirror imaging. It's not exactly the same, but it is the same energetic principle, now moving in a different part of the alchemical cycle.
So which 2 chakras would these 2 represent then?
Well, if we were going to look at it at
mirrors,
at a shock, they don't consider it so much in this sense, because they're looking at this as a time cycle. They don't see it as much reflected in the physical form of the chakras, but it would be the 2nd and the 6th if you were to see it in that form.
I think that's interesting because actually in the Vatican Library, they have this same separation. So there's a room called the Sistine Hall.
I was just there.
The room, have you been in there before?
I have not.
Okay, so the room is shaped like a book that's open on a table. And it has a spine down the center that are represented by 8 columns. And each of the columns are represented by, there's a Hebrew period, there's an Egyptian period. So it starts with Adam. And then the next column has Abraham holding a compass and a square, which we don't think of Abraham as holding a compass and a square in geometry. And then the next pillar would be, like they're like the chakras, but it's also, the room is representing on the right side faith, and on the left side culture. On the right side would be the feminine, and on the left side, the masculine, bringing things of thoughts into form.
Yes.
And so polymaths, and they have all these polymaths, including Pythagoras. There's a Greek pillar, Greek Greco-Roman pillar. There's a pillar also for Egypt. There's a pillar. So each one of these, and Hermes Trismegistus is one of the pillars.
Hmm.
And it represents the second, or the sex chakra, right? The sacral,
Yep.
which is fascinating because it's sort of like the emanation of Kundalini
Connected to the fifth
life
chakra.
force as well. And I was finding all this Hermetic symbolism embedded right into the Vatican Library.
Hermes is
Fantastic.
connected to the
It's
throat
literally
chakra.
the left and right
In some
aspects of the
cases.
brain and the corpus callosum, and the very center of that corpus callosum, of
There.
course, being the cave of Brahma.
Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And again, the principle behind this, I think, for our viewers to take away from this is that you will find all of this embedded information within patterns that are shown in these esoteric contexts. So, for example, what I just described with the first and the seventh, if you think of them as being connected in an arc, and then the second and the sixth with an interior
wave.
arc between them, third and the fifth, and another arc, then the fourth stands alone as a balance point. That is actually the form of the original Jewish menorah, as
Yep.
taken from the Temple of Solomon, shown on the Arch of Titus in Rome. And so, and this is something that they
for that as
don't
well.
explain externally. They say, well, this is the form of the menorah, and we have this thing about it. But the whole idea of it really is that the whole form of the menorah is showing the sevenfold time cycle. It actually is based on the first and the seventh candlestick are connected in an arc, the second and the sixth, third and the fifth, and the fourth stands alone as the balance point or the turning point of time. Then that connects with the Rosicrucian work, being essentially esoteric Christianity, believing that the time that the great initiate Jesus was able to take in the sun spirit to transform the consciousness and the energetic sheath in a type of solar yoga to a much higher level was a turning point in time and a change of the mysteries and initiation processes to a new phase. And that was the fourth standalone period in the Greco-Roman time. So again, we see in something like the menorah the actual preservation of the pattern of the 7-year time cycles, which then, once you go into it, elaborates into all this greater understanding of what's happening to manifest in different ages on the planet.
Okay, so the center point is the fourth,
That's right.
right? So that's the heart.
Exactly. So in the chakra system, that's why they understand that the heart is going to be always the organizing center. Now, again, when I work with Dr. Karim in biogeometry, everything is about the center. Even if you're working in a location and you're doing an energetic gridding and energetic transformation of any location, it's all about having the center. The center is the universal balancing, harmonizing
Yep.
force. It's actually
Kind of inertia.
believed to be connected to the divine plane
There you
in
go.
a very realistic way. So one of the fundamental teachings of Egyptian biogeometry that then energetically tested, we can see a particular vibratory energy that comes from an activated center, is that if we look at the boundary of any physical object, that boundary of the physical object is considered to be the physical plane manifestation, the boundary shape. If you were to go slightly inside of it, then you would get to the etheric level, then you'd get to the astral, then you'd get to the mental, then you'd get to the causal, then the spiritual. But the absolute center of any physical form, the actual geometric center, is considered to be a transcendental gateway beyond space and time to the divine plane. So the divine plane is literally in the center of everything. So many of these techniques in biogeometry are about how do you activate that center. So understanding that from that Egyptian context, used for practical things like energy balancing locations and building sacred temples and things like that, then within the temple of the human physical body, the way the Rosicrucians look at it is that there's 3 ways you could open up your energy system to structure the energy body. The old way from the east is to open up from below to above. That's like the Kundalini method, open up the base of the spine, shoot the energy up. The challenge there is that doing this in the old ashram forms, you would then have to protect people from excessive sexual temptation, or all the energy from the activated base of the spine is going to go out through sex, and it's not going to get up to the crown center, which is their goal in that particular system.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that if you try to open that energy up and you haven't purified all of the subtle energy channels, the nadis of the energy body, you're going to get what's called a diverted rising, and you're going to get kundalini sickness because too much voltage is coming from the base, the activated kundalini at the base of the spine. And if it goes off into the wrong channels, that's where you get what they call the kundalini sickness, where you get the headaches and it's hard to concentrate and you begin to get certain types of illnesses because it couldn't go cleanly up to the crown center. So that's the below up method. The top down method is opening up the crown center first. This is what's shown in esoteric Christianity when you see Jesus being baptized in the Jordan by John, and you see the column of spirit, the column of energy above his head, and there's the dove of the Holy Spirit descending down the column into the crown center. That's a representation of the top-down method of initiation. We activate the higher consciousness first, and then we start moving downward from there. But the Rosicrucian method is neither of those. It's the center-out method, activating the heart chakra first, making an organizing center, and then you start activating. Any activations you do for the other centers will be properly harmonized and balanced with everything else happening in the body of energy.
Interesting. So is this also related to the concept of the ring cell? Are you familiar with ring cell stones? So
no,
I was just at a at a Buddhist home, and they had these little bowls. I saw them when I went to visit Dalai Lama. They have these little bowls with these crystals in them. They look like amber beads. And they are the cremated remains, the crystal cremated remains from the heart of high lamas. So what's left over is these little small crystals. And so when you look at the Salvator Mundi painting by Leonardo da Vinci, right over his heart, and that's actually a cross section of the Great Pyramid in the X. It's exactly the right angle and everything with the Eris edge. And there's an amber stone that's right over. It's an inverted pyramid, though, right? It's right over the solar plexus, and there's one exactly over the heart. Now, when you flip it the other round, the amber stone ends up in the head, right? And it's actually slightly different stones. The one that would be in the head would be a tiger's eye. The one that would be at the heart is a amber stone. And then the one that's at the solar plexus is a cat's eye. So these represent future, present, and past. And as we ascend and go higher into our wisdom and move beyond and transcend beyond this duality plane, that they believe that crystals are formed in the heart, and that they collect these crystals. That's the first place it forms from. So it's interesting you said it starts from the heart in Rosicrucianism.
Yes.
Because not so many people have the knob of Staff of Hermes, which is the reason it's cat's eye is because it represents Jupiter. And not cat's eye, sorry, tiger's eye. It represents Jupiter, right? And that's what the cave of Brahma becomes. It becomes this crystal, like a walnut-sized crystal, when we're fully embodied. And by the same token, we end up with a cat's eye at the solar plexus. And that this, when you burn the remains of such a lama, you'll find these crystals in the burnt ashes remaining. It was interesting that in the description of the burning of at the stake of Joan of Arc, they found a large crystal. One of the guys there found a large crystal that was left over from her remains, and he tossed it in the river. And many believe that was the refined purity embodiment of their life force energy that carries through your different incarnations. Have you heard of this before?
I have. It's absolutely fascinating. I love the idea. It gives a whole initiatory meaning to the Pearl of Great Price idea, that we're actually forming this physically, energetically in the body. One thing that's fascinated me for a long time is the initiatory use of different types of minerals and crystals in different traditions. So, as many people will be aware of, if you take a look at the Old Testament, at the discussion of the high priest going into the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Solomon, they had to wear the breastplate of Aaron with 12 specific stones to be able to survive the procedure to go into a place where you are in a presence of that intensity.
It's like a lead jacket when you go into a surgery where there's like CNA fluoroscopy or some sort of x-ray.
Exactly, but rather than lead, you have exactly 12 very precise stones in a geometric format that had to be on the energy body to be able to handle the input that you would get going into the Holy of Holies. And then you find that that mystery of the 12 appears in the book of Revelation with St. John, talking about the 12 stones that are the foundation of the New Jerusalem. And it's fascinating to see what stones that they're discussing for these particular activities. I was very fortunate to be able to take courses with an amazing Taoist teacher of what they call stone medicine. His name is Jeffrey Ewan. He's the 88th lineage grandmaster of the Jade Purity lineage, and one of the only people I know in the world that is teaching the original Taoist stone medicine. It's incredible stuff. But the thing is that when the communist Chinese took over China, they destroyed, just about everything related to religion. They killed a lot of the Taoist masters, things of that kind. And so originally, the Taoist esoteric medicine had just as advanced a stone medicine as it had a plant medicine. But to create what's now called traditional Chinese medicine, which is not traditional Chinese medicine, it's the modern communist Chinese version of it, they took out not only all the esoteric references from the Chinese medicine that the Taoists had created, they also took out the stone medicine, because they thought, well, for us to get the Chinese medicine out, in the West, they just understand pharmaceuticals, and that's related to the plants. So they'll understand plant medicine. We have acupuncture and plant medicine. If you go to TCM education now, that's what you're going to get. But they also had a mineral stone medicine that was incredibly advanced. And when you get into what these Taoists actually understand about what the different stones do energetically in a human being, how they activate certain forces, it's absolutely mind-blowing. It goes way beyond what we have with crystal work in the West today, with the level of precision and insight that they have with it. Now, there's also the aspect of it that it just became very clear to me, seeing their perspective on it and some of the other great traditions, it became very clear that if you're starting to deal with a vibrational science where particular powers are crystallized into physical matter, that if you're looking at human beings or animals, our vibration changes all the time because we have an astral body, we have emotional function. Somebody will be very positive one moment and be an absolute pill to be around the next moment, because the emotions are constantly being activated and changing. Animals are somewhat the same. And then for plants lose their vital energy, their siddha, their power, once the volatile oils dry up. At that point, if the oils have dried up, there's no more power left in it. But minerals can hold their vibratory power for millions of years. They are the most stable anchor of vibrations on the physical plane. And so if you look at the distribution of different types of stones used in the ancient world throughout the planet, that it's like putting a particular siddha or power in a crystallized, preserved form throughout the body of the earth. And this has always fascinated me, so that now when I go to like the Tucson Gem Show, and I see it from the perspective that the mineral kingdom is the library of all of the divine vibrations crystallized into matter on the physical plane, it becomes a very different type of experience. But it's something that's absolutely fascinating. So that's part of my perspective on the thing with the crystal science of the ancient world, and then about the actual creation of these actual crystals in the body. It's like collapse of the wave function in physics. The wave of what they've generated as far as their merit of what they've done with their consciousness and their energy has actually crystallized and collapsed into the physical form, into the body, that then is something that put into the earth is almost like the minerals distributed in the earth, but it becomes an anchor for this merit or this new vibration to help transform the earth to its higher stage. It's an offering that then remains preserved, almost like the incorruptible body mystery that you have in Catholicism and other traditions, where the bodies of the saints don't necessarily break down after death. So there's something I think that's incredibly important about it, and really points to the significance of physical crystallization to add to the process here in addition to the aspects of when we get out of the physical body and are operating as a being of pure consciousness and energy.
So it's so fascinating what you're saying, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
If you look at the pyramids on Giza,
Yeah.
right, and each one of them has a different slope angle. That's where I spent a lot of my time analyzing why did they choose the slope angles that they chose. And Menkaure pyramid is actually a 5/4 ratio, height to 1/2 base. And then when you look at Khafre pyramid, that gives you exactly, by the way, the 51.34 degree angle of Menkaure pyramid. Khafre pyramid has a 53.13 degree angle, and that's exactly 4/3 proportion. So the height is 4, and it doesn't matter what units you use. It's the proportion of the height to the 1/2 base.
Yes.
And so it gives you 5/4 and then 4/3. And then the inverse of 4/3 is simply 3/2, because you basically take and double the 3 to make it 6/4. And that reduces to 3/2. And then the Great Pyramid is 2/1 pi. So you've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fantastic.
And these are musical relationships, because 5/4 is the major third in music. And then its inverse would simply be 4 times 2, which is 8, 8/5. And that becomes, that's the relationship of the major third and the minor sixth. And then in music, and then the Khafre pyramid is 4/3 and 3/2, which is the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth in music. And the Great Pyramid is 2/1 pi. And the King's Chamber specifically is 2/1. So it represents the doubling of the octave. Each of these proportions, and they're perfect. It's not like semi-perfect. It's like absolutely perfect. And it's the tetractys, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's just another layer of the tetractys.
Yes.
And so what we find in the King's Chamber at the heart, which is what you're saying, going from the center out, and these 12 petals. 12 is also a number we associate with the 12 crystals that you just said with the breastplate that the Kohanim had to wear, the Berat Kohanim had to wear when they entered into Solomon's temple.
Yes.
But it also represents time, right? Time is a reference that's based on the base 12 system and the sexagesimal math system. And I had discovered on the rim of the sarcophagus an Alpha Omega. In 2018, I knew I was going to discover it. Something told me I'm going to discover it. And I remembered being there when it was placed there. And it's a perfectly formed Alpha Omega that no one had seen before. And it's right on the back rim of the sarcophagus on the southwest side. And I don't know, have you been inside the King's Chamber?
I have. I've laid in the sarcophagus. It was a very transformative experience.
It's incredible, right? It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because, Alpha Omega, and here it is. I'm going to show you the picture of it because you may not have seen it.
Yeah.
Alpha Omega.
Huh.
Right on the back rim of the sarcophagus.
Wow.
And that's a very Rosicrucian symbol.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. It's 5.605 inches wide, which is pi times 10 taken to the square root. And the room itself is pi times 10 meters in perimeter. So you talked about 137, talking about patterns. 137, the number of times if we stack the sarcophagus in the room, it will stack 6 times to the ceiling and 5 times side to side in the room. Perfectly. It fits exactly 137 times into the King's Chamber.
Wow.
Golden ratio.
Fantastic.
Which is the fine structure constant, the separation of light from darkness.
Yes. That's amazing.
So the 1, 3, 7, 12, and 12 relates to time. And so if you break the room up into cubes, you have 432 cubes that fit perfectly inside the room based on the Royal Egyptian cubit as well. And then that's the circumference of a circle that has a diameter of 137. So this perfection is built right into this. And what we found also on the walls in the King's Chamber are petroglyphs of all the 36 zodiac signs that are called the Deacon of Astrology. And I just presented this to the Scan Pyramids team.
Wonderful.
And we've now found Taurus, Leo, all of the constellations. So it's 36 Decan, which, of course, the Decan are 3 for every zodiac sign. And so there's actually 48 symbols etched into the walls. And we found those etchings into the walls, and they do not look the style of Egyptian art. They look very much, it's all coming out in my second season on Codex. It looks like a Stargate.
Wow.
So the time, it's basically a time matrix that's showing us the 24,000 year cycle, showing us where we are in the cycle, even embedded into the room itself. And what's fascinating about it is that the transcendence of time, or the knowledge rather, that we're going both forward and backward in time at the same time. So we go forward in procession of equinox, but at the exact same time we're going forward in procession, you reference Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar.
Yeah.
We're also going backwards, and precession means to go backwards. So if we got rid of our clocks and our watches and just looked at the stars, if we could zoom out enough to be able to see the full cycle, we'd see that it's a Mobius strip or a Klein torus that loops back on itself, because we're going forward in procession annually, but backwards in precession over the long cycle. So the notion that as we transcend beyond judgment and transcend into love, we start to experience the ultimate duality differently, which is time itself.
Wonderful.
The notion that time is all one, and we're just separating it through our own persistent perception of the one arrow of time, but it's not only one arrow. So it all emanates from the heart, and the King's Chamber is actually the heart chakra chamber. And the next chamber up is the throat, and then there's going to be 2 more above that. And Da Vinci had it all embedded inside his Rosicrucian oriented thing. And the Last Supper painting is also matching this. So, and the location of Alpha Omega on the rim is exactly where Jesus' hand is touching Mary Magdalene's hand on the Last Supper. Like exactly in the same spot.
Fantastic.
So I think that all of this stuff, and I encourage you to have a look at Codex
Yes.
on Gaia, because I think you're going to find it's all Rosicrucian stuff.
Yeah. And so much of what you're talking about, let me just riff on a couple of things that you came up with there to tie it into the tradition and pieces that we can see of the breadcrumbs left behind. So you talked about when you start stacking it together, you get 5 and 6 for the number of times you can stack it. The 5 and 6 comes up so often.
Hexapentacus.
Not only in the Rosicrucian work, but in many ancient traditions as
DNA
well.
DNA too.
And also appearing in the form of the symbology of the rose and the lily in medieval times, because one is
you just gave me chills on that one.
Yeah,
Whoa.
The rose and the lily. Lily is the 6-sided. The rose is the 5. And what you'll find is that if you look at this is a representation of the power of 5 and 6, which in the ancient knowledge was related directly to the actual form of the human etheric life body in the physical body for the 5 and the astral body for the 6. So one way that this is related is if you go back to the old Egyptian hieroglyphs and you find the one called Saba, S-B-A if we put it into English, but of course it's in old Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's the form for a star has a center that comes out. It's like a raised center. It's circular or spherical. And then it has 5 lines coming out from that center. And that's the form for a star. And that's directly related to the 5-foldness of the human physical body when you stand like a star, like in Da Vinci. And because then you've got the heart is sending out the energy to the head and to the arms and to the feet. And so that was actually a form in ancient Egypt for the form of a star related to the 5-foldness of the human etheric life body. Then in the next cultural periods, what they did is they took the termination points and they connected them together into a spin flow pattern that became the pentagram. Rather than from the center outward as straight lines, which is what you'll see in ancient Egypt for the Sabah, you'll then see it in the form of the pentagram after that. And that's why if you look into the fairly hidden types of teachings of, let's say, a great Christian Hermetic master like Stylianos of Teslis, the great Greek Cypriot master who was known to the public as Daskalos, one of the first things he would teach people is that there's a particular type of debased black magic sacred geometry form that is taught in the Mediterranean that you could project on a person's body to be able to disable them or to try to kill them or do various harmful things to them. And he would teach different ways to be able to create an upright pentagram in the human energy field related to a particular archangelic force that would then literally break apart that projected black magic form of this other geometry that is used in Mediterranean magic. And so these actually then have particular applications in the deeper hidden teachings of the tradition, whether it's in the Egyptian form of the radiation from the heart in 5 directions, or it's in the form of the pentagram. Then the 6-pointed star becomes related to the form of the human astral body. And the fascinating thing about this is that, this really got popularized with the work of Bernard Perona, known to the public as Drunvalo Melchizedek, with the Flower of Life workshops. But a lot of the fundamental information about what Merkaba was understood to be in the ancient world was not included in the workshop. And so if you could go back, let's say, it's probably at least 60 years before the Flower of Life workshop came out, you can go to private teachings that Rudolf Steiner gave to his initiates in Switzerland and in other countries around Europe. And what he told them at the time is that the human etheric life body is related to this 5-pointed star form in your energy body. It's literal. It's not a metaphor. And the same thing is true for a 6-pointed star in your energy body. And he said at the time, it's not a flat 6-pointed star. It's a 3-dimensional form. You'd have to rotate it on its axis to see what it is. And so essentially, that's the stellated octahedron. That's the star tetrahedron of Leonardo. And so that's what then got popularized as the Merkaba in that later work, because that is a form of the human astral body. So whether it's represented as the rose and the lily with the 5 and the 6, or as the form of the pentagram and the hexagram, which particularly became the forms in medieval times, these are actually related to the geometric forms of the human energy body. And so to see the 5 and the 6 that you talked about inside the Great Pyramid, this is like such a key coding in the ancient tradition of 5 and 6 together, because it's the key to activating the life energy body and the consciousness body. So another thing,
this is really illuminating. I mean, it's so funny that you're saying this, because literally on my whiteboard right now, I've got this whole thing 6/5, which is really the Philosopher's Stone proportion of the pyramid. It's the same one on the dollar bill, on the backside of the dollar bill. It has a height of 6 and a base of 5. I just went to visit that pyramid there's one Gaius Cestius pyramid in Rome that is exactly that proportion. The same as the dollar bill. And it's also the same one that Queen Victoria made for her dead husband, to commemorate him, Albert, in Scotland. And it's a very sharp pyramid with a 67.4 degree angle.
Nice.
And it's if you take the circle of Vitruvian Man and the square base, connect the base of the square to the top of the circle, it makes exactly that pyramid.
Wow.
It's the 6/5 relationship that you're talking about. And the King's Chamber has the same proportionality, because, to draw a pentagon in geometry without measurement is not exactly the easiest thing, right? There's a few methods to be able to do it. The way that Albrecht Dürer outlines is actually not correct. It doesn't make a perfect pentagon. And we've measured it on GeoGebra. It's close, but it's not perfect. The simple way to do it is to take the proportions of the King's Chamber, which is the 2-to-1 rectangle. And from the 2-to-1 rectangle, you can make very easily, without any measurements at all, a perfect pentagon.
Fantastic.
So this relationship of 5 and 6 is built into the proportion of the King's Chamber.
Wonderful. That's fantastic.
And that's kind of, so please keep going what you're saying, but I'm just riffing off of what you're saying now, because I'm connecting so many dots.
Well,
of
let me take
what
it
exists.
a little bit further then, because what you're
Okay.
saying is so exciting. That so if we look at this 5 and 6 relationship to the etheric life body and the astral body, and that being connected with all these other manifestations, because a lot of this has to do, of course, in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, with an initiatory process. And so when Drunvalo talked about the form of the star tetrahedron being the Merkaba, he didn't go into, well, what does Merkaba actually mean? Well, you could go back to the Hebrew and say it comes from Rachev, which means to leave your normal place and travel, and this type of thing. It's like a ascension vehicle, just like they talked about the chariot of the Godhead that would be perceived in the vision of Ezekiel or something like that.
Right.
But if you actually go back to ancient Egyptian, the thing that always surprised me is that in the discussions of Merkaba and modern Western esotericism, nobody went back to the original terms in ancient Egypt, because these are three well-known terms. The Mer,
Merkah and Ba,
the Ka, and the Ba are very well-known hieroglyphs that are connected to esoteric processes. So the Mer is the ancient Egyptian word for love, and the Ka is the ancient Egyptian word for the etheric life body. It's shown by the two arms up like this that you see above the head of the Ka statues and things. And the Ba is the astral body, represented by the head of a person on the body of a bird, because the astral body flies. It goes through higher worlds and can travel and perceive. So Merkaba, literally in ancient Egyptian, means love, life body, and consciousness body. And what it's talking about, to make the Merkaba, where you get pulled through the higher worlds as the chariot, in what was described in the later Jewish Kabbalah with the Merkaba riders that were part of the Hecheloth school in the 2nd century in Judaism. What you actually then have is that you are using the force of love coming from the heart to transform the etheric life body related to the 5-sided form and the astral body of consciousness related to the 6-sided form, and that the transform through the force of love, life body and astral body, then creates an energetic envelope that will be magnetically pulled through the higher worlds to go up to the higher worlds, to the Godhead, to go through the 7 heavenly halls that are described in the Hecheloth school of the Jewish Kabbalah, and also represented to some degree in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And so when we see how these pieces fit together in the old tradition of the geometries of 5 and 6, of the term Merkaba, about the actual geometries of it and how they come together, it's a pretty amazing thing.
Well, the original name of the Great Pyramid, one of the names is Mer.
Oh, wonderful.
And the second pyramid is Khafre. And you wonder why they called it Khafre. But essentially, it's a Mer, Ka, and Ba. The 3 pyramids are the Merkaba. So this is really fascinating. I think this is definitely, we could probably riff on so many things, I'm betting, right, that could be very, very significant. And it's just, so if I just show you this related to, let's see, you should be able to see this first. Let's see, pull this up here. Okay, let me turn the sound off. Okay, so this is the problem of how to make a, I'll make it large so you can see this. So to basically starting from the King's Chamber proportions of the 2-to-1 rectangle, from that, you can make this perfect pentagon. And I only discovered this last week, or like 2 weeks ago. And so you use this to make a perfect rectangle, which is 2-to-1. And there's the blue rectangle that's 2-to-1. Are you seeing this?
No, it's okay. Now I see it.
Okay, so let me see if I can somehow bring this down a bit so you can actually see.
And now you're getting into the 3 sacred roots, or the square root of 5 here too, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's all built into the proportions of the pyramid. That's what's really bizarre, right? Truly bizarre.
Love it.
So let's see here. Let me see if I can. For some reason, it's not letting me show the whole thing. Here we go. Okay, there we go. So if we start from the beginning here. Okay, so this is basically pointing out that Albrecht Dürer didn't give us a perfect pentagon. And I think he didn't do it on purpose. Like, this is one of those things we're supposed to find.
Right.
And so basically what it's showing is that you can start this, that's the Albrecht Dürer pentagon, and you've got like 109 degrees in there. It doesn't fit. It should be 108 degrees for each of the angles, right? So I started to find, okay, if I just took why is the Great Pyramid King's Chamber a 2-to-1 rectangle? And because it's the way to get to the 5 and 6. It gives you the pentagon, and the 6 is already embedded because you could just take circles with the same, the radius is the same as the side for a hexagon. So you start with this 2-to-1 rectangle here off on the side in the blue. And then from that, you simply then take a line that cuts across the intersection of the circle and then measure the distance. You don't need any measurement to do it. You just basically use that small circle in the upper left-hand corner to reference it. And then that gives you exactly the proportions of the pentagon.
Beautiful.
Simply by taking a baseline that's perpendicular to the smaller circle base tangent, it gives you the perfect pentagon with 108 degrees all the way around.
Fantastic.
So it's embedded within the 2-to-1 rectangle of the King's Chamber, is giving us this esoteric knowledge. It's matching as well what we know already to be true about the stacking of the King's Chamber sarcophagus 137 times and 5 times to wall, and then to the ceiling 6 times.
Fantastic.
And to me, that's like it's showing this embodiment of what you're talking about in Rosicrucian. And by the way, the Alpha Omega is believed to be, by many, the symbol that's on the side of the mother ship Athena for the Arcturians.
Oh.
So we think of it as Greek, but it's not really Greek potentially. It could be a lone symbology. And of course, the A represents the Apis bull and the Omega represents the Hathor. And
Wonderful.
That's another Alpha Omega, the son and the mother. And basically, it could all be that, you're talking about us transcending beyond our physical bodies. That's basically describing what Arcturians are. That they've transcended beyond their physical body. They're no longer bound by time. And maybe the reason why we found Alpha Chi Omega literally at every major site in Egypt, including the Osirian, and even a rose cross we found on the Osirian. Have you been to Abydos before?
I haven't been to Abydos, no.
Okay, so Abydos is supposed to be one of the very oldest places. It's the place where the flower of life is burned into the walls, right?
Yeah.
And there we found, right in the most prominent place, a Alpha Chi Omega, and in the center of the Chi is entirely a rose cross. You could actually see the rose in the center of the cross.
Wonderful.
And it's like fascinating because how in the heck could it be this old?
Yes.
And I'm just trying to find this for you now so we can see this. But the Alpha Omega must have been there forever. And the reason why I found it was because I remembered being there when it was put there. I literally had a memory of being in the room when the Alpha Omega was placed there, and I remembered where it was exactly and found exactly the spot. I just looked down at the exact same spot, and there it was.
Wonderful.
So it's like, who knows what that all means? I literally have no idea, but I can just tell you that that's how I remembered it in essence.
Wonderful.
And so here is the Alpha Chi Omega that you'll find at the Osirian, which is very Rosicrucian. So this is the Osirian temple, and you could see a cross right here with a rose right in the center.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's raised. It's not engraved. It's raised. And you've got an Omega right here. You can even see a triangle inside of it if you look closely. And then you've got the A shape that's actually engraved. So it looks like this above it, and there's a rose right in the center of it.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And I love the fact that it's in the form of what it's similar to what we think of today as a Maltese cross, but is a much older form that contains within it all these vortex dynamics, uh, even like top and bottom vortices of the human energy body, and then the front and back of the heart with the rose in the center, because the form of the cross like this is something that's very energetically dynamic. From like an Egyptian biogeometry perspective, this has a lot of powerful energetic harmonics within that form of the cross. It's absolutely beautiful to see. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, I think, what I feel like we're looking at here is that the King's Chamber is actually like a planetarium of time that shows us the forward nature of time and the backward nature of time. It has all these harmonics in it, the 6/5. And that's such an esoteric, hermetic symbolism as well.
Yes.
It's also a masculine, feminine balancing. And I feel like it's telling us something about this hero's journey, and it directly relates back to Orion constellation. And there are 4 pole stars of the North Stars. Our North Star is Polaris right now, but it used to be Vega, it used to be Deneb, and it used to also be Thuban. So every 6,000 years, we end up with a different North Star position to navigate from. And those stars in the sky make a 2-to-1 rectangle.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's fascinating. If you look back in the tradition, you can find these aspects where there are these 4 stars in the 4 cardinal points of the heavens related to what later became the 4 writers of the Gospels in Christianity. So, you got the lion, and you got the bull, and you've got the man, which is related to Aquarius, and then you've got the eagle. And the eagle, of course, is Scorpio. And so each one of these then, with the cosmic cross of what creates the perfect 180 degrees, 90 degrees form in the sky of these 4 positions, then become related to the 4 writers of the gospel for the New Testament, with the most esoteric gospel, of course, being that of John, who is the eagle initiate. And the eagle is the higher octave of Scorpio. So behind all of the work around St. John and the book of Revelation and the gospel according to John, which is the most cosmological of all of the gospels. It's the one that starts the prologue to the Gospel of John that talks about great spans of time. This is related to the initiation related to Scorpio and to the eagle initiation, as it was called in ancient times. It was called the activation or the initiation of the eagle. And the concept there is that you are training a person to be able to see across time. Because normally, let's say that time is a river as a metaphor, a person standing on the bank of the river, if the moment that we are seeing at the river right now, right in front of us, that's like the present moment in time, if it's the river of time. If we look,
So the Big Dipper goes around Polaris, what we're calling now the celestial North Pole, and there's varying degrees of movement, but the celestial North Pole stars are always around the northernmost regions of this Earth plane. And so Orion, the Big Dipper, there's so many different references to these constellations, these luminaries, and their travel paths during key periods like the winter solstices, the summer solstices, the equinoxes, etc. And I was going to share an image, but no, I'll let this play out, and then I'll
to one side, we can look off into the future. Look to the other side, look off into the past. But the eagle can rise up above the bank. And
oh, actually, no, there was something. I'm going to share Grok because I talked about angular diameter before, and I just wanted to make sure that I was correcting myself on that, or being more elaborating more. So the sun's altitude and path diameter by month. So at the South Pole, the sun's altitude above the horizon changes monthly during the polar day between late September to late March. So these are the equinox periods, and polar night. So that's from late March to late September, like I just said. So where people in the northern regions experience their summer months. So the angular diameter of its daily path, the range from lowest to highest altitudes above, as observed by the observer, reflects the cycle, so monthly altitude range. In September, polar day begins around September 22nd, spring equinox. The sun rises in the east with an initial altitude of 0 degrees at the horizon. By the end of the month, declination is approximately 3 degrees altitude. Path diameter approximately 6 degrees for October. Path diameter approximately 26 degrees. November approximately 44 degrees, and December solstice on the 21st of December. Altitude 0 degrees to 23.4 degrees south latitude of the equatorial ring. So path diameter, as observed in the sky, is 46.8 degrees maximum. Okay, and then January you've got it's getting lower. So the path diameter being 36 degrees. February 16 degrees, and then from there. And so I hope that makes sense. And then I talked about other things. So let me see here. Okay, so the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn are the northern and southernmost latitudes where the sun can be at zenith, 90 degrees altitude, during the year, corresponding to the June solstice and December solstice, respectively, due to Earth's, and I don't know why it's talking about that again, but it always has to add in its own flair. Okay, so it has nothing to do with axis or anything like that. It has to do with the ring paths that Eudoxus talks about and countless other greats for the past. And anyway, I'm really close to the screen right now.
See it from above and see the entire
even the Southern Cross, the sun never actually it's too far south for the sun's travel path. And so, but there are periods in mid-December where the Southern Cross, even though it should be observed, it's unobserved. Why? Because of the sun's proximity to it. And so that also makes sense where it's like with the Tropic of Capricorn being the southest latitude, the sun's travel path is, it would be closer to that Southern Cross. And so they say between the 17th, the 18th of December, but again, getting close to the winter solstice where the sun obscures the Southern Cross with its light. And so I think that that's also symbolic in these occult writings and teachings as well.
River of time from the past to the future, which means all of the alchemical stages that have to occur in an orderly process to reach the final teleological destination. And that's the manifestation of the vision of the eagle in esoteric Christianity, is with the work of John as the eagle initiate. But it's so deeply embedded in this type of stellar knowledge, and to get trained to see across time and see time as complete patterns, past, present, and future, as an alchemical stages of development sequence. And that's been a part of the tradition for a very long time. I also want to touch on something else amazing that you talked about, which is about the different slope angles of the pyramid. And I wanted to share that back in the 1980s, I was very fortunate to take a few classes with Marcel Vogel. And Marcel Vogel was known as the IBM scientist who helped to develop the magnetic coding for hard drives. And so he helped create all of our modern computer technology by creating the magnetic coding for hard drives. But he later became known as the guy that created the Vogel crystal, which is a very precisely cut, double-terminated crystal. And so it was great to be able to work with him directly at that time and take some trainings from him. But what's fascinating with that is you can still find pictures on the internet where he understood how mind power interacts with physical matter, particularly through crystalline matrices. And so one thing that you can find on the internet is a picture that he focused on a plate of amorphous liquid crystals. There's no image in it. And he meditated. He was a Catholic. He meditated on the Divine Mother. And what you'll see in the picture is a perfect picture of a robed woman, the Divine Mother, in color on the liquid crystal template that he imprinted with the force of his mind. Wow. It's absolutely incredible when you see it.
Allegorical.
Now, on top of that, he would talk privately about other things that he could do, because he would make sure that the Vogel crystals were cut at a specific angle. He said every angle has a different power. And if you see things with the different angles, like in nature, they have that angle to access whatever that power is. Now, when I trained with Dr. Kareem in biogeometry, we have the same thing, that there's the universal principle where different quality scales relate to each other. So you could get the same energetic quality or power from a particular color or from a specific sound or a specific shape or a specific angle or a specific number sequence. And so we work with different angles and design to create different energetics. One thing that Marcel Vogel talked about with his work is that he cut the Vogel crystal so it would resonate with water in the human body, the carrier of life force in the human body. And to do this, he looked at two things. He looks at the bonding angle inside quartz crystal itself and the bonding angle of water. And he then manifested that in the cuts that were made to the original Vogel crystals. He said he experimented with other cuts, but he didn't trust himself with the power that those angles brought in. So he told the story one time that he was giving a lecture in an auditorium, and somebody in the audience decided to screw with him and had launched a kind of psychic attack on him as he was speaking. And what he had done is he had a specific crystal that he had figured out what is the angle for levitation effects, a specific angle that would allow things to lessen their weight and to levitate, like, Tibetans with the blocks and the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so he had that with him, and he picked it up, and he looked at the person, and with the crystal in his hand cut to that angle, he made the person rise above his chair and then slammed him back down. But he was so disappointed with himself from that, he says he broke the crystal and he would never use it again because he couldn't trust himself with the power of it. So there's a whole aspect here about the power of angles. If we look at all these different angles that are cut into these different structures in the ancient world, the pyramids and such. And, if you go to Nubia, then you've got the really severe angles. Or some of the things
those
the
are the
Russians
67.4 degree. Those are the Philosopher's Stone proportion.
Yeah. So they're related to very specific powers.
The Philosopher's Stone may actually be someone's urine. There's what was the book called? It was released. I have to look back into that, but where it's Aristotle or something or other that was mentioned in it. But where people were trying to do this Philosopher's Stone because there was a recipe that was released on Reddit and it made it viral and then it got taken down. But where people, again, if you take your urine and you have to do something very specific with it and put it in like different jars over time and then filter it and make sure that you have a certain diet. Anyways, it gets to a point where you can like make this possible stone. And that's what people allege. Some theories out there that it's the Philosopher's Stone is actually urine. I was talking about the Big Dipper a lot, and so I just wanted to show what I'm talking about because I'm a visual person, and so I've shared this so many times before. And so you've got the Big Dipper, which always travels around the North Star. It's Polaris, currently the celestial North Pole, and the luminaries seem to travel in a perfect fashion around the North Pole Star. So not just the Big Dipper, but you see here in the spring where it's at the top, you have a plow or a shovel where it's dumping out whatever's in it. So this could be like that because this is the period in the northern regions where 90% of the population reside, where we plant seeds in gardens during the spring, throughout the summer, and then we harvest them in the fall. And then you have the winter extremes here. Summer and winter solstices, and so again, this is also a way to navigate and to know the seasons. And so I've talked about my astrolabe before. Like this was an ancient supercomputer, and this again was used for so many different reasons. And then you've got Orion. So I'll just share what Grok says about Orion because I've mentioned this before as well, but. Again, like I really think that people need to talk about astronomy more when they're talking about esotericism. Okay, so you've got Orion. I just typed in Orion 25 December. So Orion on the 25th of December. So Orion is at its highest and most prominent in the sky on December 25th, nearly overhead at midnight for mid-latitude observers. And so talking about Orion on Orion's belt. Again, this is another correlation with the 25th of December. And then you got Sirius too for the new year. Anyway, just the luminaries. There's just so much to look at. Take your pick. So even Venus, incorrectly is called Satan. Sorry, Lucifer. Lucifer is called Satan, and Lucifer is connected to Venus. Venus connected to the color green. Where was it going with this? I lose track so much. Oh yeah, and so there's during certain seasons where Venus appears as an evening star, and there are seasons where Venus appears as a morning star. So there's times where it precedes and proceeds the sun as it's rising.
That are it's absolutely amazing.
Lucifer's not
As
the devil.
this gets us into the energy science of ancient
So it's
Egypt.
funny, just we'll have to finish probably on this, but
Yeah.
You mentioned the bull, the eagle, the man, and the lion.
Yes.
Which, of course, are the references from Ezekiel as well to the Ark of the Covenant faces.
Yes, exactly. And that's
which
what
I
came into
believe
the New
the Ark
Testament.
was. I believe the Ark was actually in the king's chamber, and was in the sarcophagus because its proportions fit exactly inside of it.
Oh, beautiful.
And so here's the thing: the walls. I'll show you the walls.
Okay.
So these are the LiDAR scans.
Oh yeah.
Of the walls.
So cool.
So this is a bull right here.
Mm.
If I can expand, I don't know why it doesn't give me the full. There we go. Okay, so you can see a bull right in here.
Yes, yeah.
Taurus.
So you see this is on the north wall of the king's chamber. There's a bull in the wall. There's a lion on the west wall.
Fantastic.
There's a man on the east wall, and these have been scrubbed off. And you can also see right next to the bull, or around the bull, is a larger cow.
Ah.
It's got horns right here. That's the Hathor.
Mm-hmm.
And then above it is the face of a man, Orion, because that's where the constellation would be. It's in Taurus.
Mm.
The Orion has the two pupils right here. You can see the nose bridge, and it's also got Lyra over the eyes, which is the bird. So
wonderful.
All the constellations are embedded into the walls. We've now found 40 out of the 48 total constellations that would have been at the period of Ptolemy. And
the light is never in Taurus.
this is just kind of like super fascinating, because we started looking at this a few years ago, and we've now found just about all of them. And then on the east wall, and it's matching exactly the Ark of the Covenant, which is also matching, by the way, the tribes of Israel.
Fantastic.
Taurus and Orion, they're not within each other. They're adjacent to each other. They're adjacent constellations. And Orion is always visible near Taurus, especially in the winter. However, Orion stars are permanently fixed in the constellation Orion. Like, that's why it's a constellation, not Taurus. So just wanted to clarify that.
The 12 tribes of Israel. So the symbol for Dan, the tribe of Dan, is the eagle. The symbol and the standard bearer for the tribes of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim were the bull. The symbol in the encampment of Israel for Judah, which, by the way, the number of people in the encampment of Israel is the speed of light. It's 186,400. And the encampment of Judah is lion, Leo. And the man is Naphtali,
which makes
Aquarius,
an X.
So it's probably why they took it out of the pyramid. They knew the pyramid was oriented around the zodiac.
Exactly.
And they mirror imaged it in the encampment of Israel during the 40 years in the wilderness.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So this is this is the east wall.
And in the tabernacle in the wilderness, you have that double square root of 5 form that you showed at the center of constructing the perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is oh, you know what? I thought this was a wrong film. Hold on a sec. Okay, so it goes back to this. Here we go. All right, so this is a woman riding on a Pegasus, and actually is there's an etching into the wall as well that could be paint, but it says Thoth on the wall. Literally Thoth. No one ever looked at the LiDAR scans of this before. After we discovered the Alpha Omega, then I was like, all right, there's got to be more here. So here we go. So there's an eagle above. There's an arrow. And then right by the legs of the horse, it says Thoth on the wall.
Wow. Fantastic.
I think Da Vinci left the Thoth. I think these etchings are part of the structure. They're almost underneath the surface, although you could see it at the surface as well. And this is exactly the position of the constellations: Delphinus, Pegasus, Sagitta, and Aquila. They're all in these exact correct spots. And then the upper left of the eagle is a fish shape right here, a Vesca piscis. And the fish shape is the Piscis austrinus, exactly where it's supposed to be.
Fantastic.
So this is a zodiac reference. The whole thing is the deacon of astrology.
It's the fixed signs.
So if you look at it now without this, see the hand right here, the woman's head riding on the horse, the rear legs of the horse right here. Here's it says Thoth. Thoth.
Oh.
We don't know who left that there because that's obviously like English or Latin or Italian or something. It would be the same spelling.
Yeah. But
there's a bird up here. And so we had no idea. We'd mapped the wall from based on what we could perceive and see. And then someone on our team who is an expert in the deacon of astrology said, wait a minute, that's Delphinus, Pegasus shooting the Sagitta at the Aquila. And then there's got to be a fish in the upper left of the wing of the bird. And there was. And we started mapping all the walls, and it's all matching this same story, right? Which is, I believe, the story of mankind going through this cycle of, its ascension. Even down to Vitruvian man. Vitruvian man here, he had placed inside the Vitruvian man, he hid all of this esoteric knowledge. I mean, look at this. This is pretty funny. Here's the Vitruvian man, and he's got the strangest abs I've ever seen. Because look, he's got 3 diamonds right here. Who has diamonds for abs?
Yeah.
Well, those are actually Orion's belt. It's actually the pyramids, all 3 pyramids. And here's the Sphinx.
Fantastic. Amazing.
I mean, kind of hilarious, right?
Yeah, that's great. Oh.
He even embedded in the Vitruvian man at the heart chakra chamber this weird shape, which is exactly the shape of the king's chamber.
I'm going to show just a few more images. Okay, because I talk about fixed signs, mutable signs, and so you've got the zodiac signs on the far left here, sign name, and then you have it if they're feminine or masculine, what element they're part of, their modality, and the quadrant. And just like you see on a lot of astrological wheels, and so you've got Aries being Yang, fire, cardinal sign. I've talked about that. So when you map out the cardinal signs on the astrological wheel, like I'll show you again, it does mark the cross. And then when you do the fixed signs, which they show as Taurus is a fixed earth sign, as you see here, a yin, so a feminine sign. And then you have Leo. So there talks about a lion. You've got a bull. You've got a lion. This is another fixed sign, the fixed fire sign. Yang, a masculine sign. And then you have Scorpio, which is sometimes seen as an eagle as well, which is a fixed water sign. Yin, a feminine sign, another feminine sign. And then the last of the fixed sign being Aquarius, another masculine sign, air sign, represented by a human. And so this is where these are the fixed signs. And when you mark them out as their path, the sun's path through them, you will see again either an X or a cross. So I'm going to stop sharing this and then just share. I'm going to shut it down because I have so many images. So I talk about the analemma and how even if you're heliocentric, it shows on the globes this type of analemma, what I'm talking about. So you see here the sun's travel path when it's traveling in the north of the equatorial ring and then south of the equatorial ring. It maps it out where Tropic of Cancer and the summer solstice at the top, at the very top here, and at the very bottom here, you have the winter solstice when the sun's travel path is traveling through the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the furthest north and south that the sun travels, apparently as observed by us human beings on Earth, traveling from the east, going towards the west, approximately 15 degrees every hour, which makes up the divine 24-hour clock. What they're saying is the circumference of the Earth, which I think has to do again with the sun's travel path and the measuring of the distance of the zenith during these extremes, and then and not anything to do with how big this is. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this is just sharing the astrological wheel. When you have it broken down, you have the sun and the moon at the top, Leo and Cancer. You have Leo and the sun being yang or masculine or positive or magnetic, radiating. You've got Cancer moon, electric, silver, feminine, yin, electrical energy. And then you have it where it just so happens, just like the chakras and just like the luminaries, how heliocentrics say it, this shows how close possibly these luminaries are to the sun and to the moon, but more to the sun. And so after the moon, which is possibly closest to the sun, and again, it's possibly during certain periods because they do have their own circuits or travel path that they travel above us. And then you have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and at the very bottom, Saturn. Also connected to elements, like I said, lead being at the bottom that you see here, which there is, fun fact, a slight repulsion to magnetic fields with lead. And anyways, there's a lot to unpack about gold and silver and milk and honey, Ida Pingala, accessing your higher levels of consciousness, traveling through the chakra systems, and the impact of the luminaries. But I don't know. So I hope that makes sense as well. These are just visuals here. And so I'll share the wheel again because I said I would. And so this is reversed now so that you have the sun and the moon sort of at the top, and then you have Saturn, which rules over Aquarius and Capricorn at the bottom, like directly below. So again, this is not by accident that there's so many connections to that. And days of the week and things like that. Yeah, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury. On a daily and annual basis. And this is why you know your rising signs and your sun signs and things like that. I haven't talked about precession of the equinoxes yet, but I will at some point.
This is the shape, and this is the line where the heart chakra chamber is, which is the king's chamber. And it's the time chamber. It's the fourth dimension. So the fourth dimension is when we start to learn to transcend out to go to the fifth and transcend through time and perceive time entirely differently. And I think that's where we are right now. I think that's the deal. And this is the cycle right here. The king's chamber becomes all these zodiac signs. It's just like the encampment of Israel, the 12 tribes.
Yes.
And each of the corners represent the four North Pole positions that are then with different stars. Thuban, which I showed that other picture earlier. Thuban, Vega, Polaris, and Deneb. And the Orion, and if the sarcophagus were in the center of the room, it perfectly matches the three belt stars of Orion, which is something about what you're talking about from this gut, right?
Yeah.
And this is understanding the past. When we finally move into this, because the gut or the solar plexus is representing our past.
Yeah.
Mankind understanding its past, we have to pull the sarcophagus back to the center to understand our past. And these are the three kings, right? The three kings of the time of Jesus' births and Christ's consciousness, representing the return. So the three, obviously that's Altinach, Almanac, and Mintaka.
Fantastic. That's great work.
Oh, I can't hear you now for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can hear you now. Okay, so
Great.
we're back. I don't know what happened. It just
Fantastic.
changed it to Microsoft Teams. But so I think we're kind of at the end anyway. So that was the point where you're supposed to go, wow.
No, that is amazing. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And it inspires me to share one thing with you along the
Go ahead.
lines of this, that there was an incredible body of German research that was done in the mid part of the last century, connected to a body of work based in Switzerland called geobiology. So what they were doing is they were mapping all types of phenomena related to Earth energies and the energetic qualities of power spots, of finding the energetic grids in the Earth and their exact distance apart, where there were different polarities and intersections of the grids, all these types of things. And one of their discoveries was the form of an energetic grid that's in a cube form, roughly 10 meters in every direction. And so that 10-meter cube, that's an energetic structure in space that they began to identify in the German research, became known as the Benker grid because of Mr. Benker, who found it. So I was very fascinated. They had found these energetic cubes structured on the Earth, connected to the Earth grids, but actually in space and stacked in space. And I was at the time doing research on the stones used in the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Solomon. And so one of the things I found fascinating is that, of course, the Holy of Holies is a cube, and that what they give as the dimensions of it in the Old Testament are extremely similar to what was found empirically by the Germans in finding this Benker cube structure. Now, I found that really fascinating because one thing I learned from Dr. Kareem with the biogeometry work is that in classical times, it was very common to build on the Earth grids, not only the Earth grids that are what we think of as lines in the Earth and then they rise up like walls, but there's also Earth grids that cut across at heights. And so what you would find very commonly, and he spent time in Egypt and at Giza Plateau and looking at the relationship to the Earth grids that they built these structures on. The thing I found so fascinating is that this energetic three-dimensional cubical grid structure empirically found by the Germans of the Benker grid was almost an identical match for the cube of the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Solomon. So this is an energetic structure at a major power spot on the Earth, and using the ancient method of building the walls of the structure along the lines of the already existing subtle energy grid existing in these power spots. So I just wanted to share that with you because that's something that's really opened up a lot
interesting
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically, it's almost like they're, what's the word? Like magnifying the resonance of the local place. And maybe that's why.
Yes.
I mean, the Giza Plateau is known as the throat chakra of the Earth. And so you've got Lake Titicaca, which is supposed to be the sacral chakra. The root chakra is Mount Shasta, right? There's all these chakras around the Earth.
Yeah.
Maybe part of the reason why Egypt is so interesting in the awareness now, the collective consciousness, is because we're kind of moving into this throat chakra, and that's why everything seems totally not quite right. Everything's a little bit off because everyone's having to confront their own honesty now on everything, and every feeling that was not felt and every word that was not said but wanted to be said is now being said. And then everyone's like, well, what is truth? Well, as you said, the only way you can get a semblance of potentially the truth would be to get 12 of the subjective perspectives of that truth. That maybe we're not living in an objective material reality as much as we're living in a subjective mental reality. And mentalism being the core principle. And so the one divides itself into the many for the joy of perceiving itself through our unique eyes of perspective. And the more of those perspectives it can produce, it gains more and more wisdom. And the ultimate truth that combines all of it, just like Buckminster Fuller said, that love is metaphysical gravity.
Ah,
It's the love that's the darkness that we don't understand. That's why it's dark to our perception. So it's such a beautiful thing. And to me, I think it's pointing back to this beautiful aspect of the one perceiving itself for the joy of perceiving itself, gaining wisdom, learning how to love and how to be loved from every different possible perspective of perception, and then the joy of coming one again. And we're just going through these different cycles of the zodiac, which all this metaphor is transiting all around us. And this is the story of humanity going through this zodiac to serve this purpose for the one to perceive itself. And I think it's just magnificently beautiful. And I really value your input because you have so much, a vast array of knowledge to pull upon that could really advance what's happening with this, because it is definitely now really advancing rapidly. But we need more people, like people who have the kind of very broad knowledge like you have, which is extraordinarily rare. And I've got to get you to come on a trip with us to Egypt. We
sounds
do these trips that are of discovery, and it's incredible. And I
it's
brought a lot of people that you know already.
yes, I've heard from some of them about your trips. It sounds fantastic. Well, thank you so much for all the kind words. I've so enjoyed being here with you today. Thank you for everything that you've shared and all the amazing work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure to visit with you today and to be able to share so much. Thank you again.
You've really taught us today about Rosicrucianism, and I have a feeling that in a past life I was a Rosicrucian. So I'm definitely feeling this, and I'm starting to wonder. Okay, who was Robert Gilbert, the other RG? There's probably
We're the two RGs, yes.
that's right. We're the R squared G, right? So but I'm really fascinated now to figure out, because I've met other people along my journey. Do you know Matthias Di Stefano?
I haven't spent time with him in person, but I know him through being at Gaia, yes.
We went to Egypt together in December. We went again to Egypt together about a month and a half ago.
Wonderful.
And then we went to Scotland together. We spent the night outside at Clavicairn, which is supposed to be, it's an Orion time space portal as well.
Ah,
And we've been working together on so many things. He's very different than me, but we somehow get the same kinds of information coming in. It's just he gets it energetically, I get it more mathematically.
yes.
And I'm sure that with all of your knowledge, I mean, there's quite a team that we've assembled that we call ourselves the Ascenders.
I love it. That's great.
So I have a feeling that you are definitely invited into that club, and
Oh,
probably
thank
you've
you.
invited yourself through time, because I have a feeling you're going to be finding, and you have already been finding the things you've been leaving to yourself through time.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a good topic for us to talk about in the future. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been such a pleasure. You definitely did exactly what I thought you would do. You blew my mind, which is really not that easy to do these days, but you definitely did. And the synchronicities were very high. So I look forward to inviting you back at some stage, and I'm definitely going to send you.
All right. Yeah, that was very interesting. And don't forget to check out Pat King's channel at noon. My podcast with him is going to air live. I drove all the way to Montreal for it. It was super fun. I hope I get invited back, and let me know what you want us to cover for the next round. That was all about COVID for people. Spoiler alert. But anyway, on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.